booked a flight for Friday, and they haven't heard from any of their relatives, so they're beside themselves. Because I guess the town where they live in is practically all underwater.
Oh, horrible. Well, Cuba had quite a time of it.
I don't know.
So Sarah's boyfriend's sister is in Cuba working. Recently to a different apartment, and they were okay, but other places are just buildings completely collapsed because the infrastructure's not that great.
Well, I remember, not that I ever witnessed anything like that. I was, a kid. But my mother used to say stories about 2 or 3 hurricanes that were really bad. And she said that the water would just wash into this in Havana.
Good. All right, seeing as it's 7:33, I'd like to call this September 21st, 2017 meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Tonight's meeting will be broadcast live by Chelmsford Telemedia and recorded for future viewing. If anyone else in the audience is recording tonight, please let us know now. Hearing none, tonight we'll be following the published and posted agenda, and the first on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
All right.
I'll make a motion that the minutes of September 14th be approved as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving along, is a report on and discussion of the fiscal year 17 close for the Chelmsford Public Schools. Dr. Lang and Joanna Johnson-Collins, our Director of Business and Finance. And thank you both for being here tonight. Oh, yes. Jam-packed.
We won't belabor this. Just wanted to thank everyone. Just wanted to have an opportunity to come and review the report that we reviewed with the school committee back at the July and then August meeting on our fiscal 17 closing. Fiscal 17 was a good year for us, and we're already in the midst of 18. We had a very good opening of school a couple weeks ago, and we're already in the full swing of things. But just a few highlights for you. We did email this packet to you. I don't have copies, but we do have that for you. The school department in fiscal 17 did fully expend its budget. A couple of the highlights for you just to share, and then the very last page of the document is just a listing of all of our revolving and grant funds. But we finished the year in very good shape. We were able to make a couple of adjustments at the end of the year to continue to build up some stabilization funds in the school department, largely for special education costs. As you recall, a couple of years ago, when I first came, almost a couple of weeks on the job, we realized we were about $500,000 in the hole on some special ed funds. So we really are trying to make a concerted effort over the past couple of years to build up some reserves to be able to deal with some of that volatility that you just can't project within the funds itself. So one of the funds where the school committee can do that is in the circuit breaker reimbursement funds for special education. School committees are allowed to carry over up to a full year's allocation of circuit breaker funds, which is a little under $2.5 million in the school department. Obviously, we're not there yet, but we're able to, at the end of the year, have a circuit breaker balance of a little over $1.4 million. Of that $1.4 million, about $600,000 of that funding was actually, for accounting purposes, the savings from not settling the contract negotiations that we were in. So, really, as far as putting funds aside, it's a little over $800,000 that we've been able to kind of have in reserve. Technically, we're accounting for it there, but that is the reason for that.
Okay, I wanted to ask a question to that point.
Sure.
Because I noticed, so you had set aside money in last year's contract in case the contract got settled.
Correct.
And there are 2 accounts, and one was says salary reserve CO. It's under page 6 of the report, the 2350 classroom teachers salary. Okay, so the salary reserve CO had originally $800,000, and then salary reserve LE had $115,000. and then they were each adjusted down, but that was a salary line item, right?
Correct.
So, like, reading through this, what I interpreted was that, because that wasn't spent, that was rolled over into, out-of-district tuitions, is that what happened?
Yeah, what ends up happening is at the end of the year, when the school department builds their budget, we have certain offsets to the budget. And one of the offsets is how much money we're gonna charge against the circuit breaker fund for out-of-district tuitions. So, in kind of layman's terms, you know, we had funds within our other accounts within the budget, say salaries that obviously didn't get fully expended because we didn't settle the contract. What we were able to do was actually set aside less of the circuit breaker funds toward the regular budget and kind of carry that money over in the circuit breaker account from fiscal 17 to fiscal 18. Do you follow me?
I do follow you, okay. Without getting too elaborate, this is my question. That was a salary account. Just last week, we heard from the town accountant that salary, the money put aside in the salary accounts can't be used for other expenses. That, you know, because that's what the other town departments returned for free cash, was the salary account. So this is a salary account, and I feel like, was that really supposed to be rolled over somehow into the special education costs? I wonder about that.
Yeah, well, we didn't roll over salaries into a special education account. What basically happened is we had surpluses within our salary accounts. Our special education tuition account is technically an account that runs in deficit all year, and then normally what we would do is an expense transfer at the end of the year to settle up the account. But we allowed, you know, basically the extra money to accrue within the other operating accounts within the budget, and then we had to do less of a transfer of circuit breaker funds to balance the budget. I don't know if that's
I
making sense.
understand the process, but I just question that these were targeted as salary monies, that it doesn't seem,
Right, but
because
the-
unexpended. Like,
Right,
at
this-
the end, after you revised it, there was, you know, $740,000.
Correct. The school department, though, as you may know from over the years, they do have the ability to, unlike possibly other departments, transfer money within their accounts to be able to do that.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a vote.
Right,
I
and what
didn't
the
see a
school
vote.
committee did in July was actually take a vote to have us offset those funds from the circuit, from the local budget against the circuit breaker account, to take less of an offset.
Okay, actually, I saw that vote. It wasn't, it's supposed to be a line item, budget control by the school committee. And it was, the motion was to move all, it sounded like something to the effect of all excess funds. And it didn't say a specific amount.
Well, in July, we had the preliminary number. We didn't have a final number because we hadn't closed the books yet. So I think what we presented to them in July was about $1,802,000. And then over the course of the month, as we were still closing things down, it did end up being about $1,000 off. It was $1,803,000. So we gave them a preliminary number in July, and then in August, we went back and reported the actual number. And again, it was off by about $1,000, but we did report that to them in August.
Okay, I don't want to, we have a long agenda, and I was just curious. I do feel like salary should be salary, and that perhaps that should have been maybe like free cash back to the town. But I do later, and you can speak to this, since the contract has been confirmed, and that happened after you closed the year, it says in the papers that it's retroactive, and I'd like to know how you're going to account for that, retroactive, since everything is supposed to happen in the same current year.
Sure, the contract did settle after the end of the fiscal year, but that was the reason that we actually made that adjusting transfer at the end of the year. In essence, it's going to free up money in the fiscal 18 budget. Right now, the money is in the circuit breaker account. What we'll be able to do is a transfer between special education tuition back up to the salary accounts within the budget to be able to account for that. So this is historically how this happens, as far as carryovers, to be able to account for that.
Well, I don't know if that's, you know, whatever you say, I thought everything was supposed to be expended within the same year and returned to the town if it wasn't expended. And like I said, the town accountant did say last week that salary can't be used on other things, so that's my question. And, you know, we'll let, maybe the town accountant later speak to it, or, I don't know, I feel like, it's complicated. It's not straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, again, for like the viewing audience, or I know you understand the accounting practices probably better than, I'm trying to speak so that people at home can follow us. I'd be happy to sit down with you, you know, on the side if you have questions or
Yeah,
review it.
like I said, we can.
But it is common practice, as far as accounting, to be able to, because again, the school committees, unlike other town departments, they can actually settle a contract without, say, having to go to town meeting for a vote, and they need to be able to,
I know
account
that,
to
but
pay for that.
I know that, but I think the money's supposed to be in their budget, not special education line item transferred around. That's all.
Like I said, I'd be happy to talk with you further if you want. Historically, this is a common
In
practice.
Chelmsford?
I don't know in Chelmsford, within other school departments, this is typically how those things are handled.
Actually, historically, the last couple of years, that's how it's been handled as well.
Here as well? So as far as that's concerned, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's a good news story as far as the, being able to set aside a little over $800,000 for those special ed costs. Again, the DOE allows you to carry over your full year's allocation, so we'd like to see it, and I personally like to see it be closer to the $2 million mark. Partly because if you ever actually have to dip into that account, you want to be able to smooth out kind of the replenishment. You don't want to have big spikes in your tuitions and then your reimbursements. So if we ever did have unanticipated costs come up over the course of a year, knock on wood, we're looking good now. You'd want to be able to pay for those, but then not have to immediately take the hit the following fiscal year. But if you have a little bit of a reserve built up, you can then kind of smooth the effect of that hit. But I think that was a kind of a positive action for us, and obviously something we'll continue to work with the committee on. The other thing that we were able to do was allocate, or not have to reimburse the portion that we'd set aside for school choice. So we're also building up some reserve in the school choice fund. So when you actually take a look at the, and again, that's a fund that is kind of at the discretion of the school committee with regard to what to fund it on. The nice thing is that it really can go towards any educational expense. It doesn't have to be earmarked towards any one particular thing. Again, my focus for the time being would be to try to kind of have that reserve for special education, because that's the one account that is somewhat difficult to budget for. But when you take a look at that, nearly $1 million plus, say, the 8 or the 850, we're approaching what the total dollar amount of kind of that full year of circuit breaker, which is what's advisable, would be. So I'm very happy about that standing. That is something that's an account eventually that the school committee certainly can allocate and fund. I would recommend to them, and I think they would adhere to the recommendation, to use that more as one-time money, and not to really get too deep into using that as a regular budget offset, because we would just be in a predicament again of, kind of driving and waiting for the school choice money to come in. But those two accounts are good. Again, if there's any questions on any of the specific revolving funds or grant fund balances, everything finished in the black, which is good. And again, we've got a couple of those funds where we are starting to, again, build up a little bit of a reserve to help for unanticipated costs going forward. But we thought fiscal 17 really finished well. We did settle all of our contracts, so that was a positive. We started the school year with new contracts. Fiscal 8 budget, looks strong, and we'll be happy to report to you. We're going to do formal quarterly reports to the school committee, so we'll be happy to forward you those quarterly reports.
Please.
If you'd like to come in, at the quarter or the mid-year, whatever the group would like, we'd be happy to do that before budget season.
I think mid-year, actually, that'd be a great idea to have that joint meeting. So we can
Sure.
kick off that budget season, so we know where we are.
Yeah, and again, if any other questions or individual questions, you're always welcome to, make an appointment, come see me, or just shoot me an email, and I'm always happy to work with Joanna and provide you that info.
I read this summer about, I think, was it Merrimack, the collaboratives were giving money back? How is
Yeah.
that? I mean, what percentage did you get back?
They're still finalizing the number, and we had a board meeting about a week ago on that, so I still do not have an actual final number, because their books haven't been audited yet. Joanna, do you off the top of your head remember what that number was?
I want to say it's around 400,000.
It is a return that's coming back to the district, and the district has to determine if we want to take that back, in cash and actually receive a check from them, or if we want to apply that towards the tuitions for fiscal 18. One of the things, Paul did send along some literature around that new special education fund that can be established. It would mean a vote of the school committee and a vote of the town board of selectmen. I'm not sure if FinCom has to vote or not, they very well may. But I would look into that, but, if we were gonna take the revenue back, then that would probably be an appropriate account to put the funds in. But we're still waiting to see what the final number is gonna be, and then ours is Valley Collaborative, but we're working with Valley to figure that out. We had in our budget document for fiscal 18 included a small amount of that as kind of a revenue offset, but again, there was gonna be some, more than half, that wasn't used for budgeting purposes, so that will also again help towards our future unanticipated costs.
Great.
So, that's all I have. If you have any questions, like I said, happy to answer them, but I think we're in good shape and.
How are the
looking forward
modules
to
going so
another
far?
good year. They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're absolutely great. Yeah, everything came in on time. I know there was a lot of concern about that, and we were equally concerned because the kids were coming, whether
They're done or not, yeah.
whether the rooms or not. Individuals from the town really worked very hard on getting that to happen. Our facilities, people in the school department worked really hard to make it happen. They're beautiful. We opened up first day with all the kids coming, the teachers and the kids love them. We are going to be hosting an open house to the community on October 4th. So there is a flyer actually going home tomorrow. Each of the 4 locations are going to be open from 6 to 7:30 at night, and the target really is more the community to, before town meeting, we're going to send an email and an invitation to each of the town meeting reps so that they can come and actually take a look at the final product. They were very gracious in supporting that last fall. And a lot of parents have been able to access them, but I think it's gonna be a nice night. You can go to any of the 4, whichever happens to be closest to your neighborhood, or you can go to them all, and they'll be open so that people can
It's a little
get
ambitious.
yeah, go right time.
Hour and a half, hit all 4 hours, maybe.
Television is really
have you-
bad that night.
Well, have you seen the traffic recently? I just wondering.
We've had a few buses that have been stuck in it, yeah. But no, so we are gonna have that open house, and they're beautiful. The kids love them, and money well spent.
Good.
So we'll be reporting out to town meeting in the fall
How
as
many
well.
kids,
Benefiting?
yeah,
Approximately maybe 400, because it's 22 classrooms. So I would say about 400 kids are benefiting them. Each of the 4 schools is housing the 4th grade students in the modules. Center ones are attached, the other 3 are detached, but all 4 schools have the 4th graders utilizing them. And
400 is the new kids, kindergarten.
no, I was talking about who was in the modular classrooms themselves. How many new kindergarten kids?
Yeah.
Well, it's about the same number, it's just that they're staying for a whole day, because they used to go half in the morning and half in the afternoon.
Okay.
So now it's like double the size because they're there for the whole day. But we'll be actually providing a report to the school committee. It'll also be in time for our budget preparations, our October 1st student enrollment numbers. So when we do that for the school committee, I'm glad to send that over to you as well,
That would be great.
just so you can help kind of see year to year what's happening.
How's the new transportation director position?
Good, he's settling in. This first year is just an adjustment for everyone. But no, I think actually we're gonna see the benefits of kind of taking control of some of the, the routing and the management of the bus fleet. The first year again is just gonna be.
Growing pains.
Excuse me?
A little growing, like the first
Oh,
year's gonna
growing
be
pains,
growing pains,
because
yeah.
again, we haven't actually housed the software that the transportation company has in the past. Taking a look at routes, what we're finding a little bit is sometimes, what we thought was a route wasn't a route, or, we have a written route, but a bus driver might not have been following it quite to the letter of the law. And, so, that's what we're kind of working through the growing pains now. But, first week of school, this year and every year, you're gonna have some complaints. But it's quieted down quite a bit since the beginning of the year, and I think it's only gonna get better. The traffic has been a killer.
Oh, traffic's been ridiculous, you can't control
How are you
that.
guys adjusting for traffic? 'Cause I know the other day I dropped off my kids and it took me an hour
Yeah.
to get from McCarthy to my house.
The bus drivers themselves are pretty good at trying to find little workarounds, but I'll be honest with you, it's been that you can't even 100% guess, what's happening at any one particular point of town. Like when we
No.
opened up school, North Road was really bad because they were doing the sidewalks.
Yep.
But then now there's something happening up kind of behind North Road. I forget the name of the road, but it's like every day has been a little bit of an adjustment. The parents have been pretty good about, working with us, and, what we always encourage them is to, kind of arrive at your stop 10 minutes ahead of time and be prepared to stay 10 minutes after, just in case something happens with the buses. But we have made, actually just today, Joanna and Peter is his name, the transportation coordinator, they updated some of the bus routes. They're gonna be posted to the website tonight or tomorrow, and then we're gonna incorporate some of the new stops for next week. But again, that's gonna need people to bear with us for a couple days while the routes are adjusted. It's a work in progress,
Okay.
but I think it's positive.
How many kids are going to the Neshoba?
I do not off the top of my head.
We can certainly ask the Neshoba.
I don't. Okay. All right, well,
All
thank
right,
you very
well,
much.
Thank you very much, yes.
I appreciate it. Like I said, email, call with anything.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is a presentation, review, and discussion of warrant Article 6. And do we have a representative from the Board of Selectmen and/or the Economic Development Commission?
Maybe in the hall.
Are they in the hall still? You guys, come on down.
Yeah.
It is his position. We did provide him with a recommendation for what that position should be, but it is his position that the attorney would.
We certainly appreciate that, and we welcome him to come up. He has spoken on it before. I hear through the grapevine that we may have a consensus as to how we're moving forward. If there's any other additional discussion, we can talk about that during public comment before our vote. But if the representatives from the EDC and the Board of Selectmen are more comfortable having the town manager speak on it, we're more welcome to have him come forward.
How do you want to handle it? You want us to do it?
Group effort.
You want me to do it for 2 minutes?
You guys did all the work.
Okay. Well, everybody else did the work, I'm just here.
All right.
Okay, all right.
You can pull up another chair.
So we'll put on the chair if you have to. Yes, thank you. And we all know that you if you introduce yourselves for other people at home, that'd be appreciated.
Michael Kowalik, 9 Whipple Tree Road, member of the Economic Development Commission.
Pat Wojcik from the Board of Selectmen.
Paul Cohen, Town Manager.
Thank you.
As the quick backstory, the last time the EDC was in front of here, there was a question about how we were going to structure a business development position within the town environment. In subsequent meetings, Pat, leading the Board of Selectmen, I was part of the subcommittee for the EDC. We got together to hash out and reach a consensus on responsibilities. The overview is, I know there was discussion whether it should be a full-time or a contract position, but in part, we moved it from a deal-making position to one that was based on retention and building business and contacts and just maintaining a presence for the town of Chelmsford in a variety of events. So it really has become an ongoing position, is that fair to say? And took it out of the deal-making realm. So therefore, we're recommending that it be a full-time position as opposed to a contract position, because there's no deal-making component in there. Yes, they are to bring and understand who the property owners are, who the stakeholders are, understand who the development community is, and bring those parties together at appropriate times and continue to build the awareness that Chelmsford has changed how it looks at business through the overlay that was approved last year, and the dedication of the Board of Selectmen and the town manager as examples of being ready to meet with developers, property owners, and other businesses. So that's what this position has evolved to. So it would represent us at conferences. It would look at and understand the lease arrangements or the property ownership arrangements for the various parcels of land there are. In addition, it takes it one step further. It's there to build continuity and relationships with, say, the CBA, to impact and work with the Center Village Business Association, as well as North Chelmsford Association, and longer term, start looking at, right now it's 129, but there are other development potentials in Chelmsford that are longer term. You know, you talk about possibly off of Route 40. You're talking about some of the mill buildings. To start looking at what are best uses and how we can best utilize the environment that we have and understand it. So that's where it becomes an ongoing position. I got nothing else.
I guess I would add to that, I think Mike got into more of the detail than what's actually in the job description. I would describe it as more general than that, rather than those specifics. But again, we were able to come to a consensus, and I think it's a reasonable job description for guidelines to give to the town manager to come up with a final posting that would be put out there for recruiting this position and the final details.
I have a question.
I'll just summarize it. I think the position that you see here is what you generally commonly would find in our comparable communities. Billerica has such a position, Bedford has such a position, for example, and I think this position is sort of along the lines of what is the norm, and as Mike described and Pat sort of echoed, this is basically part of a team of economic development on the community. This is sort of a lead person in terms of being the outreach, you know, and establishing long-term relationships as opposed to more of a consulting type of aspect. This is exactly, you know, what I think we had attempted to establish almost a decade ago when we started it part-time. This now sort of comes full circle. It's a full-time position. I think, again, it's what you see out there on the corridor and in the Commonwealth and in many other communities. And I can tell you, the workload is there. I mean, I've been astounded in the last 6 weeks or so, the amount of activity that is going on in the corridor, including most recently, it was the governor last Friday signed the legislation for the 10 additional liquor licenses. So that also ensures that things will continue to move forward in terms of this effort to enhance development in the community. So again, I would encourage your support for this, and I provided you with the financial aspects of it last meeting.
So the financial aspects staying the
Yeah.
same based
Yes.
upon the description of this current position as it is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you had a question?
Yes, what would be a potential salary range
Yeah.
for this individual?
I think, you know, I'm requesting again, it's only going to be
One half a
in
year.
half a year by the time this person gets off the ground. So I'm requesting a total of $50,000 in total, $40,000 in salary, $10,000 in expenditures. And I think on an annual basis, basically you're talking about an $80,000 a year position in the neighborhood of about $20,000 for expenditures. And that's what you see when you look at the positions and funding levels in other communities. That's about the range that those positions are compensated at.
So that would be the top range or the?
No, that's
minimum?
basically a starting salary
Okay,
for
so it could go up to over 100,000.
over time, yes. And then obviously the other aspect of it is you have indirect costs. You know, if
Right,
this
and
person's
that's-
taking benefits
That
and
was
other
my
aspects.
next question.
So
Did you come up with a total impact?
yeah, I
in
mean, your total
indirect
impact,
costs?
you're probably around 125,000 a year when you start looking at your indirect costs of a position that's funded at 100,000. You know, you've got the benefits, the insurance, and the other aspects of it. So I think 125 is a conservative number. You know, I don't think it would exceed that, but I think that's really where you're going at. You know, as you know, if someone takes one of our health plans on a family plan,
Right.
you know, you're up in the neighborhood of $20,000.
And also, did you potentially, I'm sure you did, but did you actually study if there were possibilities of duplication of effort in positions?
I mean, I don't think there is duplication of effort. There will be. There's enough workload to go around. What it's going to allow us to do is be more thorough in our efforts, quite frankly. I mean, yeah, we've been carrying it, you know, with the team that's assembled from the Economic Development Commission, assistance from the Board of Selectmen, you know, community development, myself, my assistant, Mike McCall. This is another player who can focus more of his energies or her energies on this position. So I don't think it's a duplication of effort. It's an enhancement of effort. There's a lot of space out there, and to give you the example of how dynamic this is, you know, the Board of Selectmen's aware and so forth. I mean, there is 19-acre parcel of 3 buildings on Omni Way going out to auction the second week of October. So we've been fielding a number of calls, have met with the party and so forth. We also, unfortunately, are anticipating that the same thing's going to happen soon with the former Mercury site over on River Neck Road. That's going down the same road. So you've got some dynamic aspects going on, not to mention that the general vacancies that we've seen out there. It's a very fluid activity right now. So the need is there, it will be there, going forward, as time evolves. So what this is gonna enable us to do is to, again, enhance our efforts, and not only, again, in terms of bringing people in, but also retention and expansion of what we have in town. So I know we focus, a lot on the 129 corridor, but these aspects go across the community. There's that much going on, and between 129, Route 40, Drum Hill, and other areas of downtown, because you can imagine, we'll be dealing with the Oddfellows building within an 18-month window. I mean, there's a lot happening.
If I can, you asked about duplication, and that was a very relevant part of our discussion, not only within the EDC itself, but in the joint discussion with the Board of Selectmen. We see what Evan Belansky is really an urban planning or a planning role, and the more business comes our way, even as in an exploratory fashion, the more work that will take of his time in terms of looking at what the possibilities are and being able to really frame the new overlay. And I think what we're seeing, this uptick in business, even the sales of parcels of land, is in part due to this new overlay that we have. There's a heightened interest, there's a heightened awareness of the new possibilities that are coming with that overlay. So unless the economy tanks this severely, what we're seeing is a multi-year effort.
No, I'm just knocking on wood. Talk about tanking economy. No, you're good. Yeah.
I know.
No, I don't pound gavels here, so we're good.
But I think, we spent a lot of time looking at whether there was duplication of effort or not. And there really isn't. Evan has been part of this in terms of describing his role versus this role. And we see, where the Economic Development Commission will continue in its role is part of a team effort, and we see it longer term. And that's what we're really comfortable here. Because originally, without having those pieces defined, I could say we were not necessarily in favor of a role, but as it evolved and looking at it from a whole town perspective, it becomes an integral part of what we need.
Paul, the salary range feel like it would attract people with the skill set that you need?
I think so. I think we'll get what we need without overpaying, quite frankly.
So based upon, I'm gonna piggyback on your question, have you formulated a description of what you're looking for and what type of person you're looking to fill this position?
Yes, that's been part of the effort that the committee developed.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
okay, good.
And not only did we study the roles and responsibilities, there's also a
Qualifications.
half a page on the qualifications
Good.
part.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have
Go
more
ahead.
questions. So that's one of the questions that I still have, because I feel that a marketing person that needs to achieve what all of you were envisioning would need a lot more than 80,000. Most of them start in the 100,000. That's been my understanding of the market.
If we were in a corporate environment and it was truly a brand management or product marketing role, I agree, but what we're seeing is we're almost looking at a shared resource model here.
Yeah.
Without being too fancy about it, because what we have is we have Evan Belansky doing part of a technical product manager's role. You have a commission, EDC, that's an advisory group with at least 3 individuals that come out of the brand marketing realm. We have an approved RFP where we've hired an ad agency to develop the collateral, and that'll be coming forth. We have a recommendation of presenting to the Board of Selectmen on Monday. That was approved. So there's already monies being put in through Evan Belansky, through this RFP for the marketing materials. Already $35,000 will be, encumbered in that process. You have the EDC. So when you take a look at the whole picture, you've got one big-time marketing person.
Okay. And I guess this is my last question. all of you considered attaching cost efficiencies to this position? Such like this person is supposed to bring in X amount of dollars within the year to make this position productive for the town.
I wouldn't feel comfortable with that, because quite frankly, I don't think that you could attribute the location of companies necessarily to one individual. Or, you know, and therefore, it's unlike a sales job in that respect, where someone is out there, you know, selling, and you've got a direct return on that. What, you know, we've had recent efforts, such as the DCU effort and so forth, where obviously we didn't have such a position. And when you do have the companies come in, and again, we've had other meetings with companies, oftentimes it's over a multi-year relationship. And so I don't think that one could ascribe the success of locating a company to one individual on a team. And in fact, I think what it would do, I think it would cause some serious tensions within the team if one were to do that. Provide that level of compensation, describe saying, well, you know, 5 or 6 individuals worked in this in various manners and forms, from the assessor to the economic development, you know, director, to the town manager, to the assistant, to the member of the EDC and so forth, and then one person gets a bonus or a return. That's not how I would want to frame it.
I'm not talking about a bonus. I'm
Right.
just talking about what possible, you know, efficiencies would this person bring, not overall to the town.
I'd like to try and attack that question here,
Okay.
because in the beginning, that was one of the struggles we had, is this a deal-making role, or is it a business development
And
role?
Mike, I think what you said was you've gone away from that deal-making model, and you've gone more towards a lead contact person for long-term relationships.
Right, so the deliverables, so there still will be deliverables, and that is like how many contacts you have, how complete the database is, how well they've communicated with the Center Village and the North Chelmsford Business Group, you know, bringing in coordinating efforts. So we have 2 villages in town. You know, there's also, we talked about, you know, bringing the Performing Arts Center as part of the Village Association. That's a business development activity. So it's possible to set deliverables that show progress towards building the business community. So it's not just pell-mell. There will be hard deliverables on this position.
But, yeah, but kind of to piggyback on that, I think it would be difficult to attach discrete measurements to this position.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Because I don't know how you determine but for what would have happened. For example, you know, we've had employers come into the community, you know, as recently as, you know, a few weeks ago without this position. So if it happened 6 months from now, would you then ascribe it to that position? You know, it's sort of the, you know, I don't think you can, you know, establish what, you know, but for a type of scenario that, well, we wouldn't have been able to secure this firm but for that person. I think what it does is it gives us the resources and the outreach to make sure that, you know, we're better covering what's out there.
Yeah, and then one final point, hopefully it builds on this. Unlike other communities, Chelmsford doesn't own a lot of its own land or properties that it can market and sell. It's not like an open space like a Marlboro was, or buildings in foreclosure that were town-owned, and they were trying to peddle those. We're not in that position in this community. So it really is relationship building, bringing together 2 different parties to seeing if they want to go on the date, and if they don't, that's okay, you go to the next table. So that's the environment we are in Chelmsford, as opposed to having property to sell for ourselves. I think if we had that kind of environment, then some of the things that you're talking about might be more appropriate.
Paul, can I ask
Right? Buying that?
a question about the expenses? First, when I saw this, I was thinking that was the cost of insurance, but those are expenses for him, like those additional marketing materials, or those travel expenses? What
Yes.
type of,
Yes, memberships, attendance at meetings, you know, those type of activities. If the person's going to be out of the building a considerable portion of their time. And so, you know, if they're attending a conference in Worcester, or, you know, various activities, you know, with a trade group or an association, there are expenses involved with doing those activities. And so, you know, it goes all the way from mileage to memberships to, attendance at various activities.
And so the first year, because it's only half
Half
a year,
year.
seeing
Yeah, about
10,000, and the
10,000.
next year 25 or so?
Yeah, probably, 20, exactly, depending upon what memberships, and again, we will grow into it over time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it gonna be a direct report to you, Paul? Have you
Yeah, it'll be a
established
direct report to me, but I think as I've tried to establish up here, it's a coordinated effort in terms of it's when they come in, and I'll give you an example. We had a meeting earlier this week, and at the table, I had some people missing because someone was at a training seminar, but I had the chief assessor at the table with me. I had, the community development director at the table with me. I was at the table. If this position was here, that person would be at the table. I mean, those are the type of activities in terms of when you sit down, when there's a person across the table who's a broker, and another one who's a potential investor, and a company, that's generally how it goes. I mean, it's real, even though the person directly reports to me, we all have to be on the same page in terms of activities and coordination going forward.
No, I'm happy about that. I think as somebody who manages all those different departments, I think it'll be easy for you to, it may be hard to quantify the work that they do, but I think it's gonna be easy for you as the manager of all those departments to tell what type of work this person's doing and if they're adding value. I think Paul's gonna be able to tell immediately whether it's a valuable position or not.
My point is that perhaps the first half of a year, I think, in my opinion, a consultant would be much better to iron out all the intricacies of a position. And then if it works satisfactorily, then maybe propose a full-time position.
But I think the distinction here is we're trying to establish relationships over time with the property owners, the brokerage community, the state officials, the local merchants and investors who are already in the community. And so the idea of bringing in a consultant and providing that interaction with them, all of a sudden, 7 months later, it's a different person who then, you've not made any progress on the learning curve or the relationship curve because now you've introduced another party to the equation.
And I also believe that this full-time position is warranted because what we've seen for the last 3 or 4 years is where the gaps have been. What can Evan do well, where Evan might not have the time for. So when we start looking at where you didn't have the time for, and then we were able to create individualized buckets, it's like what makes sense over here and over here. And then working with the Economic Development Commission is we've seen what we've needed, and if you look at the makeup of our group, that we put them together, they really understand this role. So when we went forth on it, it was really, we really have a handle of what we need in this position.
Right, and I think we do need to have the continuity there, which you wouldn't have, I think, with a contractor. Somebody made the comment during the work session we had several weeks ago, this would be an outward-facing position. We have all the resources that I think we need. We have sufficient resources that are inward-facing. This would be the outward-facing, and we need to have the continuity there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Pat, Mike, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Great afternoon. See you at Panera.
Stay here for the next time.
Yeah, you probably should. I don't think you're going anywhere for a while, Paul.
Call that Paul's seat.
Next up on the agenda is the presentation, review, and discussion of warrant Article 8. And ask Bill Askenberg to present Robertsfield Improvement Committee's presentation.
Oh, would you mind, I need to hook into the computer, so could we just maybe swap spots?
Sure, okay.
Thank you.
I spoke too soon. You have to move down.
Not all the way down, just
One one's on.
it worked before we got here.
Oops.
That one was a little bigger.
That one? Which one is bigger?
There we go.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. Today tonight I will be giving you sort of a very brief overview of the master plan process and ultimately the master plan that the Roberts Field Improvement Committee prepared and presented. But more importantly, I'll be giving you more specific information about the rebuilding Friendship Park, which is the crux of Article 8. And this presentation was given to the Community Preservation Committee last night, and they unanimously approved it at a $450,000 spend. So with that, I'm going to go through a lot of information, and we'll go through it kind of quickly, so please interrupt me if you have any questions, and I'll just get going. So the Roberts Field Improvement Committee was established in 2015. We worked for about 2.5 years to create a master plan of improvements for the park. There were a number of people that participated in the committee, both on the town side and then just independent consultants that came through, as well as neighbors and abutters that attended most of the meetings that we held. So what's the need for the improvements at Roberts Field? Roberts Field is a highly valued Chelmsford park. Anecdotally, we'll say that there was an open space and recreation plan survey done recently this year, and it was the 4th highest rated open space noted on that survey. And then I'll share some other information about playground comments later in the presentation. Friendship Park is also a very heavily used playground. I think most people here think of Roberts Field, think of Friendship Park first. The athletic fields are used by Chelmsford Youth Baseball, both in the spring and fall, and now they'll be used by Chelmsford Youth Lacrosse, the open field there. And then the nature trails, the winter skating, and Pollinator Park are all heavily used now as well. The playground, Friendship Park, is becoming increasingly unsafe. It was built in the early 1990s, and the wood and steel structure that it was built with has created this unsafe environment. And the DPW has declared that it's unsafe and it reached the end of its usable life, so it needs to be replaced. The athletic fields that are there in place are commonly unusable, mainly because of drainage. And if you go there in the spring, a lot of times you see kids playing baseball, but not actually in the fields, but actually adjacent to the fields because they're flooded. And then the natural areas of the park are overrun with invasives. There's a ton of bittersweet and stuff there that's choking out the tree canopies. So this is really what was driving the master plan process. The Roberts Field Improvement Committee, our mission statement was to create a master plan that would improve and beautify Roberts Field. And we really took about this process through a community-driven process and tried to really focus on transparency. We had a web presence with robertsfield.org, and I'll mention that the presentation that I'm giving today, you can go and find this presentation at robertsfield.org, as well as you can find the actual master plan, site plan, all of our meetings, meeting minutes, documents, the whole shebang is there for people to follow along. All of our meetings were televised by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted online. We hosted a number of public site walks, public input sessions. We had park user surveys, stakeholder surveys. We did over almost 30 stakeholder surveys to gauge how the community used the park and how we could best serve them with the master plan. And then we actually gathered public written comments, which were also posted at the website as well. We weren't charged with fundraising, but we did do some fundraising because opportunities came about. So there was about almost $13,000 that was raised, mainly in the first 2 years of the process. And then we finally presented the master plan to the Board of Selectmen on July 31st. And they were unanimously accepted the master plan. And then on that day, same day, the Roberts Field Improvement Committee dissolved. So I'm here as a representative that was past chair, but also just a community member. The actual master plan had 12 large areas of improvements. The one I'll be talking about today is the larger natural playground. The key highlights of the master plan, the overall total improvements was between $700,000 to $850,000. About $66,000 of that was already sort of allocated to existing town budgets, so we did find pockets that we could work with there, and the expectation is that there'll be other areas within those improvements that could be moved over to existing town budgets as well. As I mentioned, we created the master plan with a lot of public input and transparency. One of the big things was that we recommended that the Friendship Park project be fast-tracked, mainly because of the unsafe conditions that it represents, and wanted to see that would start to be rebuilt in the fall of 2017, and that's why we're The estimated playground cost is between $393 and $456, and I'll show you some detail on how those numbers came together and sort of what the framework was for that budget, how we got there. The major recommended parts of the master plan were obviously the playground, the new lacrosse and baseball fields, and those actually got flip-flopped in location. A new interior walking trail with exercise circuits, a permanent bathroom shade structure for the park, a multi-use pavilion near the pond dredging, because the pond is actually filling in with sediments and grasses. So we found that if we didn't do something soon, that the pond was actually going to disappear, which would be a big hit for the park. And then other various natural area improvements, and then new security cameras and underground utilities. And again, all of this information, there's a lot more detail in the master plan that you can reference and find that. And I think I shared that with you for the committee.
Mhm.
So this is the actual site plan for the master plan. And you can see that it's a full plan, but we tried to cover off on all the different areas of the park. As you can see, there's the 2 baseball fields are now located in the back of the park. The soccer field now is a lacrosse field. It got moved to the forward part of the park, and that really opens up the vistas from the left and right and front to back of the park, giving more open space. The pink area on the left-hand side is the maximum playground footprint. And so what we tried to do was, as a committee, define what the maximum footprint would be so that we could incorporate the trees and landscape into the design of the playground. And then we also did tree inventory, so we inventoried all of the trees in the park, both for condition, style, and height and width. So the total budget, as I mentioned before, came in at a total of around $850, and today we're just looking at the natural playground. And you can see that this is really the biggest part, the biggest spend of the budget. This is 50% of the overall budget. The next biggest things are the athletic fields, and then the natural area improvements, and that really is the dredging of the pond. The pond dredging is about $100,000, so that's a big ticket item. But for the overall master plan, really the playground is the big cost here. To get to those budget numbers, the committee did a lot of research on other playgrounds, other things to try to make these numbers, to get to these numbers. And we looked at, one of the examples we looked at was Harmony Park, which is the playground that the town put in a couple of years ago, and that was at $120,000. We also looked at Harrington School, which was just put in recently, that was $160,000. And just interestingly, it's to note that the equipment for the school was at about $100,000 for this. And this is a smaller footprint than Friendship Park is, so it's a little bit smaller of an area, but the equipment was $100,000, and you can see with the shipping, the installation, those things just kind of add up. And then we looked outside of the market as well, looked at the Castle and Trees in Littleton, which is one that a lot of parents and a lot of park users responded that they really wanted to sort of emulate.
That's a great park, yeah.
And that cost was at around $300. And this is really sort of the way that the community was saying that they wanted to move the park towards. We also got a sort of a real-life estimate from a playground contractor just to see what would it cost if we just did an in-kind replacement. And this is using wood chips. This is the exact same footprint of the, about a 0.31 acre footprint of the playground, and you can see that's at $308,000. I mentioned that there was a lot of public input, and the direction that the committee took was based on that input. And this is just some examples of what the park user survey, what the users came back to us with, and the types of playgrounds and the types of things that they wanted to see put there. They wanted to see structures that would accommodate handicapped children to be able to play there. They wanted to see a beautiful playground. They wanted to see accessible playground, larger playgrounds, improved toddler areas, segregated toddler areas. Wanted to focus on making the playground a showpiece, making the playground brighter, leaving the trees, incorporating the trees into the park, designing the playground like other playgrounds in the area. And then from the open space and recreation plan survey, there were comments talking specifically about making a better playground, more modern playgrounds. And I think we kind of know, parents that have been to those playgrounds, you kind of know what the kinds of things they're talking about. It's the difference between what it is now and sort of what Castle and Trees is. So the committee set about to try and develop a framework for the project, for the playground project, and we defined the maximum footprint, what the maximum space would be, where the design could start. And that expanded from about 0.3 of an acre to 0.9 of an acre. So it's roughly an acre size maximum footprint now.
Oh,
Okay.
it's
It's that knocking thing.
that turns
Yeah, you know.
on.
And then so we set the maximum footprint, and then we wanted to define what our expectations were for the new playground. And we wanted to, because the Roberts Field has a very natural feel and has a lot of, already has a natural thing, we wanted to try and tie that in. And to do that, wanted to create a playground that had a mix of landform and manufactured play structures. Have the playground larger. Now, like I mentioned, it's 0.3 acres. We wanted to have the maximum footprint to 0.89. Wanted to match really the play structure inventory that's at the park now. Whatever the new one is, we should have sort of the same things, but really enhanced. And then also the scope of the project. Mix of landform and natural play structures, open views, ADA compliant and universal access design, and I'll get into a little bit of those definitions later. A separated toddler area and segregated toddler area. A segregated natural grassy area that could be closed for mowing and maintenance. Perimeter fencing around the entire playground with openings in the front and the rear. We wanted to build in a community build installation. A really big thing with the community is they want to make sure that the engraved bricks are included in the new design of the playground, and they definitely will be. And then also to include electricity, security lighting, cameras, and garbage cans and bike racks, all the amenities that make a playground a playground. And then, as I mentioned, we have had abutters and neighbors that attended all of our meetings. We wanted to make sure that their needs were met. We included a landscape visual and sound mitigation budget for that. And then also within the scope of the design of the playground, would recommend that the design move some of the noisier parts of the playground further away from the closest abutters. So talking about universal design and what is universal design, it's basically, it's a playground that allows children of all capabilities to play together. So it doesn't segregate based on ability, it really gives opportunities for kids to play together. And then a natural playground is really, it would be a combination of manufactured structures, but also a playground that just has sort of rolling hills or open areas where kids can sort of romp and play and do things like chase and tag and those kinds of things. So it's not just play structures, it's open areas as well. And the benefits of the natural playground themes are lower investment, obviously it costs less than buying structures. It's reported that there's a significantly higher play value in these types of things than there are actually on manufactured structures. Less chances of injuries, longer lasting, and then lower maintenance. And these are just some of the examples of some of the integrated natural playground and universal design playgrounds that are out there. So surfaces and equipment really define what the project would be, defined by access and use. And the distinctions are this: ADA compliant is really, an ADA compliant playground really just allows access to equipment, right? But an accessible playground actually has structures in it that kids who are handicapped can actually use, right? So there's the ADA compliance to get access to, and then actually providing places and equipment is an accessible playground. And then the universal playground is make sure that it's sort of mixed and kids have the opportunity to play together in that. So those are the three things that we're recommending in the scope of the project. The playground surfaces really define the accessibility, and really there's three types of surfaces that would be accessible. One's poured in place rubber, which is very expensive, and then we have a part of that here. They have rubber mats and tiles that can be used, and then in addition they have turf, artificial grass filled in with rubber is considered accessible as well. I wanted to point out that wood chips can be ADA compliant, but there needs to be a regular maintenance plan put in place. So wheelchairs can technically go through mulch, wood chips, engineered wood chips, but they need to be raked out almost weekly to have that to be in compliance.
Big carrying cost. Big carrying cost.
For maintenance.
Yeah.
Right. And then I wanted to mention too that in the stakeholder surveys that we did, Chief Ryan had requested that less wood chips be used because that does pose a fire and injury related reasons. So this is the overall budget the framework for the budget that we put together. And you can see that the manufactured portion of this budget was between 300 and 325,000. The overall budget was between 393 and 456. This is the structure budget is pretty consistent. It's a higher cost for the structure because it's than the Harrington and Harmony Parks because it's a larger footprint, right? So it's going to be more equipment. Then the landform play areas have between a $9,000 and $15,000 cost associated with it. We also included interior paths and then included poured in place rubber costs for a portion of the playground as well. So the idea would be that there'd still be wood chips, but it'd be a mix of maybe wood chips poured in place and then as well pathways to get to these things. And so that really is requiring a full design to get all these pieces and parts to work together. And that, when we started the process, we were under the understanding that design would be included in the manufactured structure budget. We came to find out after the committee dissolved that that's not really the case. So part of that manufactured structure budget would need to go towards a design for the overall site plan for the playground. We also included shade structures, picnic tables, and the things that we had accounted for before. I mentioned the other projects. These are just some of the other projects, and this is really, Varney Park was more of a comparison for the overall master plan. That was at about $2 million, and we ended up at about $850. And I mentioned Harmony at $120. The softball fields and parking lots that were done out here were $282. Harrington was $160, and then South Row was done, I think, in 2012, and that was a replacement cost for $100,000. So the project timetable, the town will determine the funding priorities and the implementation schedule. We recommended that replacing the playground as a priority, also that dredging the pond is a priority to be done in the next 3 to 5 years. We've tried to design the master plan so that it's volunteer project friendly, so that folks can come and take a piece of it and execute it, and so we can sort of cut down on some of the costs in that way. There will be an advisory board established that'll sort of help and assist with the implementation of the master plan. And then one of the charges for that board would be to fundraise and to find those opportunities to cost share. So the proposed timeline would be in the fall to fund it at fall town meeting. As I mentioned, the CPC voted last night on that. Hopefully get design and equipment bids in the fall, and then in late fall, early winter, prep the site for the construction to begin, and then hopefully spring or summer of 2018 start installation. And thank you. As I mentioned, all the information that we've run through is available at robertsfield.org and more.
Thank you, Bill.
Any questions?
That was very thorough, in a good way. I really appreciate it. You guys
Thank
did fantastic work in the planning. It's very clear.
Thank you.
Great job.
Can I ask you a question? On the park, you're almost tripling the size. Did you look at the cost savings if you doubled the size instead of tripled it?
We did. Yeah, what we tried to do was to establish sort of the framework for the design, and then to let the design come after that. So we wanted to say this is the maximum size that we would say that the plan should be, and to define the scope of that. Looking at the example, looking at this pricing example for the contractor cost, there's about $100,000 swing between the 0.3 acre lot and then the 0.9 acre manufactured structure budget that we have. So if you reduce the size of the play structure budget, there's about $100,000 swing in there. But again, that was we really wanted to create more framework and then let the design define that.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
What was the amount that the Community Preservation Fund approved or voted for?
Yeah, it's different, I think, than what's in the, it was originally 400, but then last night when we went through the budget numbers, they changed it to $450,000. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, 450.
And Paul, refresh our memory, this is coming, that's all coming from CPC funds?
It would be borrowed.
From borrowing?
Borrowed over a 10-year bond period.
10-year bond, okay.
Yeah, Linda Prescott's here, chair of CPC.
Yes, I know, she's coming up next. Okay. So are you envisioning something more like Castle Castle in the Woods then?
I wouldn't say thematically, I wouldn't say, but.
Not thematically, but to the scale and scope?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yeah. I think the part of the scope and expectations from the committee was that it would be more open than that, and it would have more of a natural theme. So what you might see instead of, obviously, castles, you might see, manufactured tree trunks that are, or those types of things.
To give it its own identity?
So like the one on the bottom of page 15? Bottom left?
I changed the slides.
Yeah, slightly.
Right, so maybe like, for instance, like the top right, you can see that's sort of a mixture of manufactured wood and stone. It looks like stones, but it's not, it's actually manufactured stone.
What
Okay.
about the next slide? Yeah, bottom left, is that more
Correct.
what you were thinking of?
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, again, this is gonna be,
Path plus wood, natural and.
right, and pathways to get to the different areas, segregated areas that, and I think, as much as possible, using natural landforms and landscaping to separate areas, those types of things. And again, that would need to be developed in the design of it, but that was the expectations.
So the committee's been currently dissolved, correct?
Yes.
On Monday evening, we'll be seeking the board's confirmation for an advisory committee, and Bill's name is being brought forth as a member of the advisory committee.
Can't get away that easily, huh?
All right.
I'm glad, no, but I'm glad to hear that, because especially where we're looking at funding.
Not only nominating Bill, I'm also nominating his vice chair as well, so the two of them will be carried over onto the new committee.
Good, no, great.
Okay, good, excellent,
Sent that out today, it's probably online now with the packet, so.
good. Glad to hear that. Because, yeah, we'll need some continuity. Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely, both in scope and seeing this through. Has there been any further discussion about any fundraising sources to kind of offset anything for here?
There were a number of opportunities that came up in the original committee, and it wasn't one of our charges, so we really just kind of took notes. But being that the new committee, one of the charges is going to be fundraising, it absolutely will be.
Fantastic.
And it'll be a mix of, one-offs. There's people that are interested in maybe donating a piece of equipment,
Okay.
or it might be just, some type of a fundraiser, or whatever those things are going to be. That's going to be how the committee's
Probably something like the bricks, when the bricks went in, additionally Friendship Park, or I know Castle in the Woods has the fence posts that are engraved and stuff like that. So I was curious as to, I'm glad to hear that's part of the new charge. That's good. All right. Any other questions?
I was just wondering what the breakdown is. The article says I move,
It will all be borrowed from CPC.
okay, so no free cash.
There'll be no other town monies involved. So a 10-year note, and John Souza ran the financial numbers on that, so the first year bond payment would be $63,000. And then it de-escalates, because remember, we paid level principal over the 10-year period.
Okay. All right.
And that's assuming a conservative 4% interest rate.
Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I really look forward to enjoying that space.
That's near
I know my daughter
your
does.
place.
I have so many fond memories of years ago.
My daughter played there as a toddler.
Yeah, my son, I
36
think a
now.
lot of our children. do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Review and discussion of warrant articles 10 and 11. I can ask Linda Prescott to come forward from the Community Preservation Fund Committee. Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you.
So we all know you had a meeting last night, so thank you again. Thank Bill again too for coming here again tonight. And as always, thank Paul. So Article 10, when we met last Thursday, you obviously hadn't had your meeting for this month for the CPC. And we're just looking at just where we are with Article 10, what the vote was last night, and where we are with Article 11, what the vote was last night. Just a little discussion as to how the vote was decided.
Okay, we actually voted on this list here. And it is to replenish the recreation account.
Oh, this is the recreation, okay.
Yep, and in 2012, the Community Preservation Act was amended to include recreation. Recreation, we get a lot of requests from PTOs, Eagle Scouts. You know, this is small money, and we just didn't want to tie it up for a town meeting. It just, a few $100 there, $1,000 there. So we created this account, and it gets used very heavily. So we like it to replenish it up to the 50,000.
Okay. Any questions?
It's probably going to be very important to the new playground. A lot of Eagle Scout projects in that.
There are a lot there already,
Yeah.
and there were a lot there previously as well.
Yeah, we funded a few in the past.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we actually only fund 50% of them. They have to go fundraise the rest.
The return on the investment for this account is fantastic, I think.
Yeah,
so.
we do a lot of good things with it.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Is the process, if you were, say I was an Eagle Scout, or wanted to be, is there a process posted someplace so they know how to go
Yes.
about asking for
They
money?
can go online and fill out an application form, and they can turn it into the Community Development Office. They call Colleen, and it just goes through Colleen, it gets sent to me, but there's a form, it tells them what to do. Most of the time, all the time, I will get a copy of the form and then reach out to this individual, and we have a conversation about, you know, what's involved, and particularly with the Eagle Scouts, because we don't pay for pizza. You know, we have a few of those things, and we just, we walk them through. And we have wonderful presentations. The kids come in, they do a good job. Last night, we had a great follow-up, and he did a very good job. And it's wonderful to see them growing, you know, just filling these big shoes. They do a good job.
It's great, thank you.
Yep. And everybody goes through the same routine.
That's one of the two sources that we have in town for Golden Arrow and for Eagle Scout Award seekers. The Community Action Committee is the other one that people go to.
Right, and we have an arrangement with them.
Good.
Because in the beginning, we found they were double dipping.
That was my well, that was my second
God bless
question.
America.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, we had a meeting, and the two groups, and we said, okay, we laid down the ground rules, which means we get the bigger requests because we have the bigger financial
Right.
background. And if it really is open space, you know, stuff like that, we will do that. But if it has something to do more cultural, it goes back to the other department.
Okay.
So we did work that out.
Good. All right. Well, thank you very much for Article 10. Let's move along to Article 11.
Okay, Article 11 came before us last night, and did the presentation for the wayfinding signage. We support the program, and we approved, it was $15,000 out of the undesignated, correct? Undesignated, which requires town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a small part of the revitalization of Central Square. This is one of the steps.
This is one of the continuations of the, yeah.
Previously at town meeting for the design funds to do this work, and then Jim Lane, who's here this evening, he can give you sort of what Bill just gave you, a quick overview of what was proposed last evening and what's being sought from town meeting, which will help you to evaluate.
Yeah, Jim, if you don't mind coming forward, that'd be great.
Because I think it also helps to get it out, because the last meeting wasn't televised, tonight's is. And so- and he'll be there Monday night as well, so but it's good to get, to reach a lot of.
People see, yeah.
Excuse me.
Gave us a lot of grief last night.
They're seeing a lot of use now, so.
It's that time of year.
Oh, it is. Oh, we got that one going again. Excellent. Oh, this one has animations.
Just a little. So, thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. My name is Jim Lane, and I am a member of the Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee, which is a continuation of the Center Village Master Plan Committee. and both committees were appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So in short fashion, I'll just kind of step you through what I did last night for community preservation. These are the members of our committee. Peggy Dunn, Brian Melissi, Jack Hanley, Mike Rigney is one of our new members, Jonathan Moore, who's been with us for both sessions, and then Donald Van Dyne, who's also one of our new members. So they've been with us several months and have been working hard on this wayfinding signage project. Evan Belansky, which you all know, Vivian Merrill, and Mark Favorman was our consultant that was chosen, selected to assist us with this project, and he was absolutely phenomenal. He had a lot of back knowledge of it, has done wayfinding in several other communities throughout the Commonwealth, as well as does all the branding and marketing for Fenway Park. So, came with some great background. And then we also want to recognize some of our former members, Kathleen Howe, God bless her soul, she's no longer with us, and Ann McQuiggan, who had to resign from our committee. So a little background, the committee completed a Center Village master plan study, which is right here if anybody wants some after hours reading, in 2013. The plan was unanimously accepted by the Board of Selectmen, and then the Center Village master plan recommended the creation of wayfinding signage, which can be found, an entire program which can be found on pages 37 to 45 within the plan. The wayfinding signage really has a unique aspect to it, and it changes the whole dynamics of our downtown Center Village. So, and I'll go through some of the specifics on it. But just to kind of fast track through the rest of this, we were approved for $20,000 for a design study back in April town meeting of 2016 to create Center Village branding and wayfinding signage and design services. In 2016, in June of 2016, we put out an RFP, and in September, we were, Favorman Design was awarded the contract, and then we started to work on that in September, and we just finished the project in September of 2017, just right after Labor Day, and took the final votes, accepted everything, and started to put together the PowerPoint, and tonight we're before you, so looking to go before town meeting in October. So important to note here, so you've got 3 different designations here. The red is the historic district, okay? The blue was our study area, and the green circle is a 1/4-mile radius of Center Village, okay? Just to kind of give you a concept of where we're at. So it's important to recognize, you know, what is wayfinding? Some people, it's to find your way, right? That's the simple, but it's much more than that.
It's like it says it in the definition
right,
of the word.
Right. And we found out very quickly, it's not just that. It's a whole concept. It's about physical space and how you define that, how you navigate to destinations, and how you guide people that may be familiar with the town and people that are not familiar with the town, right? And it covers, in this town, it gets a little bit more complicated because we have, you know, several gateways, 6 to be exact, right, that we've identified. We've got lots of destinations within a very concentrated geographical space within Center Village, and we have a lot of activity, and we have a lot of development that's going to be happening shortly, and hopefully with Sovereign Bank and Oddfellows, we'll even have some more development going on with possible Brook Walk that gets continued out all the way out to Summer Street, which is part of our plan. So, like I said, gateways to define the entries, right? Vehicular wayfinding, pedestrian wayfinding. Included in the pedestrian is really bicycles as well, because we got a bike trail that goes right to the heart and soul of Center Village. It's very, very active and well used, pretty much year-round. Destination identity, things like the Chelmsford Center for the Arts, the Public Library, the Common, Forefathers Cemetery, 1802 Schoolhouse. If you come from the community, you're well aware of where those spots are. If you don't come from the community, it's kind of difficult to navigate to parking and then find those destinations if you don't know where you're going. So what we found is really no consistent brand, right? And I'll show you, my next graphic will be telltale. You'll look at some of these signs and you'll say, wow, you know, I see this all the time, and it is truly a mess. We've got sign pollution in Center Village. We've got years and years and years of different types of signs that have been put in, and there needs to be some major cleanup done. And there needs some some commonality there that people can identify with, to understand that that's a directional sign, that's telling me a destination, and that's how I get there, right? Something that's quick, easy to read, and isn't obtrusive to the eye. So parking is hard to find, destinations are hard to find, specifically things like the town offices, Center for the Arts, the public library, and public parking, and depending on, you know, which way you come in, which gateway you use, the complexity can be either more or less to get to these destinations. So this is kind of a sampling of what you see today, right? And we all chuckle about it, but really, it really does bring some succinct to this on what we're trying to accomplish. If you take, for example, the parking signs, right? You've got blue with white letters, you've got green with white letters, you've got some that are 1 hour parking, and then just, you know, 20 feet down the street, on the same side of the street, you've got 30-minute parking. You've got different colors, you've got some state signs, okay? And you've got some signs that, you know, at the end of 129, we're assuming that one day that said 129, it's the end of 129, but it's no longer there, it's bleached out, and nobody's done anything to remove it.
Now it's just the end.
Just the end. But with the wayfinding, it's actually the beginning, so we'll get to that. So this is a sampling of what we're proposing. The gateway signs here are a part of the first phase, and that's the first diagram on the left. The bike trail signs, so for the Center Village area, we would do the beginning of each entrance to the bike trail as you're coming in. So that's gonna be 6 signs, and I'll go through the budget here, next slide. And then the directional signs, which are really a quick navigation point for vehicular traffic as you come in. So this is really what we wanted to accomplish in the first phase. What we didn't want to do is come in with gangbusters and throw a bunch of new signs in, and then find out that we've just added to the pollution problem downtown. And one thing that we should note is, as these will be being installed, we're going to work with DPW to help with some of the cleanup as well. Some of the things that we've identified that really are no longer applicable, that need to come off, because the wayfinding will now take the place of them.
Okay.
So we've gone through the Center Village a couple of times as a group, and we've taken some pictures and identified, obviously I showed you just a sampling of the pictures that we have. I have a lot more if anybody's interested in them. So we'll work with Gary and his team to help them with some of the cleanup.
So the circumference that you showed, that goes from, say, what street to what street? Like
Yeah, it's basically from Fletcher Street to Summer Street,
Yeah.
right, coming up Chelmsford Street.
Yeah.
And then it's from outside of Kevin Finnegan's law office on Billrica Road, up Littleton Road. So it's kind of, Kathy, it kind of takes it's that whole blue area there. So it's much broader than the historic district,
Okay.
their area, but it does overlap with it.
Okay.
So, in my last slide, I'll show you that we did go, they were the first committee that we went before the commission to make sure that, you know, we showed them what the design looked like, the size of the signs, things like that. So we were approved by that commission for the design and size. I have to go back before them, once the signs are made, and show them the locations again, so that they can, we have to make application at that point, which will be in, hopefully this spring, if we get approved at town meeting for the funding. So back on track here. This is an itemization listing of each of the signs for the first phase. Total cost of $15,000. And I know you've all been at town meeting for many, many hours, as have I. And if you remember last year, there was a figure thrown out that it was going to be $150,000. It's not going to be anywhere near that. Obviously, this is the first phase.
I seem to recall that, yes.
Yeah, and that came from really what we had put in as a budget item within the master plan, the Center Village master plan. And that, it was a worst-case scenario, and it encompassed things like legal cost for any private property that signage would have to go on. What we found out through this process is that we believe everything falls within the right-of-ways, so we worked with Evan Delansky on it. So we're not gonna get into any real legal cost.
That's great.
There may be You know, because then you have to work with easements and things like that, right?
Mhm.
Maybe even eminent domain if there's no other option available, but it looks like most of the signs and the locations that we've picked are gonna be within the right-of-ways. Now, there may be, and I would highly recommend that before we go and install the signs, like there's one that's gonna go, as I'll show you in the mapping here, upstream from Friendly's, at the very top of their parking lot in the right-of-way, as you enter in that gateway. So the library's on the left, just to give you a visual, on the right, and the top. So as you're driving in from Boston Road, and as well coming around the roundabout, it's viewed there.
Okay.
So we would obviously talk to Friendly's and let them know that we're putting in a signage, you know, some signage, and that what it looks like and where it's going.
Okay.
Even though it falls in the right of way, I think it's just the honorable and respectable thing to do.
Mhm.
And that was really, that's really the only one that we found that would.
We have a question.
Yeah, you know, just somebody that we should check in with. Everything else falls pretty much, there's another one by Littleton Road, the strip mall there where Northern Bank is, and the pizza place.
Oh, yeah,
Or
Ginger Ale
Turchi's.
Plaza.
Yeah, on, you know, the gateway sign would go
Right near the-
in the right of way, next to the sidewalk.
Okay.
And I'll get to that, it's coming up here. Yeah, so this is our signage map here, so kind of an eye chart, hard to see, but this will tell you all the different signs that are up there. Not all of these signs will be going in for first phase, but, you know, there will be 4 of these types of signs going in. Obviously, the gateway, the I signs, which are directory signs, those are the ones I showed you with the arrow that highlight. In the first phase, it's gonna be town offices, the Center for the Arts, the public library, and parking. In the second phase, we'll start to look at destinations like the ball fields, like restaurants, like retail, things that, you know, the Common, Forefather Cemetery, 1802 Schoolhouse, things that would be, you know, destinations that folks would be looking for when they come into the center.
So Jim, what about what percentage of the signage are we doing in this round?
It's the majority of it. Dollar-wise,
Yeah.
this will be the biggest ticket that we foresee. I think the next phase will be close, and the only reason is because we've preliminary selected 3 directory signs, and those are larger signs that would go, one would go probably down by Chelmsford Street as you're entering the bike trail across from the ball fields. Really geared towards pedestrians and bicycle traffic, so that they could identify with things like shopping, retail, ball fields, right? You know, restaurants, you know, without saying any names, because those names may change, right? But directions that restaurants and retail would be in, and to help provide some guidance to get there.
Perfect.
Okay. So next steps, I told you that on September 11th, the HDC was kind enough to give us an approval for a design and type of signs. Last night, I had the pleasure of presenting to the Community Preservation Committee, and they provided an approval request for $15,000. I'm here before you tonight. Next stop is with the Board of Selectmen on Monday night. I'm on their agenda, and they should have a copy of the presentation in their packet. And then October 16th, we'll have a town meeting warrant article. Sounds like Article 11.
Might be first night.
Let's hope. And then from October to February, should we gain approval at town meeting, we would order the signs and schedule, install, get the framework together, right? There is an RFP process that needs to be followed here. And then, once a vendor is selected, we would move to have the install done in March or April of 2018. At the same time, we would look to remove signs once the new signs were in, okay? And part of our goal here was to slowly, why we wanted to phase it was to slowly introduce the new branding, which we think is pretty sharp. There's a lot of time put into the branding. We spent a lot of time on a logo, and that really we really couldn't get consensus on it. So we decided scrap it, and, but even the branding, and Linda participated in that, so we had a lot of stakeholders that came in, and it was fun. So it was really fun to get all the ideas, and I think we've selected something that is, resonates with people, and they recognize it, and I think it's gonna be good for the community. It's gonna, like I said, change the whole dynamics downtown.
Fantastic.
It's great. I think it's positive and, all these nice positive things happening in Chelmsford.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Jim, thank you very much. If
Thank
you could
you.
send us a
Thank
copy
you
of
very
that,
much.
of that, send me a copy of that.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
And I'll send along the design standards as well. so it's-
Fantastic.
And can people look that, is there a presentation online?
It's in the
Because-
Board of Selectmen's meeting packet.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to the agenda and you
can
click
look
on it, you'll be able to get it.
closely at the maps. They love to do that.
And Linda, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
There may be some groaning, but given a couple of statements I've been asked to read for the next item on our agenda, and given the fact that the item following that on the agenda I expect will be a rather quick one, I would entertain a motion to take the review and discussion of warrant Article 19 out of order.
I'd make a motion that we take Article number 19 out of order.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, taking out of order, review and discussion of warrant Article 19. Mark Branco, thank you for coming tonight.
Absolutely. So I think you have the PowerPoint in your packet, is that right?
Yep.
If you want color copies, I did.
Look at that.
So I
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Skip the note taker. I should know better than that. Sorry. So my name is Mark Branco, 12 Barry Drive is the address. I'm here tonight as the president of Russell Mills Swim and Tennis Club, representing the board of directors as well as the bonded membership. So what you have in front of you is a presentation that we've been working with. We were at the planning board last week, visiting with you folks tonight. We'll be at the Board of Selectmen next week, making the rounds, and we are also holding a neighborhood meeting next week on the property with the butters, and town meeting reps have also been invited to that. So a invitation postcard went out, if you want to pass that around to all town meeting reps and to all the abutters, just to let them know what we intend to do that evening.
Thank you.
Which means we probably all have one.
So, yeah, that's true, right? Many of you have.
Mail tonight.
It did, good, all right, so that's good to know it worked. So I'll walk you through this quickly, because I know you have a long agenda tonight. So we've had a lot of partners in planning around this project, which you can see in that first phase. We've been working together as a board for 3 or 4 years, the majority of us who are on this board now, with some major club goals, which you can see on the slide, to maintain an overall club environment that continues to make us competitive and to maintain a high enrollment, which we've been able to do. We maintain about 263 families and members, which is a pretty large club for a local community club. Consistently try to maintain our operating budget to allow us to address maintenance and repairs around the club. Obviously, as a recreational facility, we're always looking to improve the overall aesthetic and entertainment value for our members. But most importantly, why I'm here tonight is to talk to you about this, develop a financial plan that allows us to raise funds and qualify for a loan to replace our pool. So our swimming pool, if you have not been at Russell Mill, is a deep cement pool, Z-shaped, typical recreational pool. The life expectancy of those large cement recreational pools is about 40 years. Our pool is absolutely at the end of life, as they say. It is beyond 40 years old. Our club manager is constantly giving updates on what it's costing and in time and in energy and money to maintain that pool. We've had divers come in year after year. We've plugged it and done everything we can to keep it running, but over time, it is absolutely deteriorated, and it is very close to failing on us. It passes every year. We do a lot of hard work to maintain it, but we are fearful that day is gonna come sooner than later. The estimated replacement cost for a pool of this size is almost $1 million. The last quote was between $800,000 and $900,000. That is a large amount of money for a privately owned club. We own a considerable amount of land on that side of town. In the past, we have been able to sell some of our land. If you're looking at Russell Mill on the right side of the club, in the mid to late 80s, we sold some of the land. Unfortunately, at that period of time, it was to settle some debt and to get ourselves in a better financial situation. We are in a much better place at this point in time, where we do have a good amount of money in our reserve, and our status is strong to the point where we were able to secure a substantial business loan to take a look at this. After studying the feasibility of pursuing the rezoning option, we met with multiple real estate agents, and I have been working with Joe Reddy from Reddy Real Estate to try to get this kind of a plan done. We worked with Sean Moriarty, the Vice President of Commercial Lending and Enterprise Bank, to secure a loan. That loan has been secured to the tune of $500,000 for this project, which is close to half of the project estimate. That is contingent upon us having the funding on the other end of that dollar figure. So clearly, we had to come up with another $500,000 or $600,000 to do this. So the combination of rezoning this land and selling the land and acquiring the loan is going to allow us to get the amount of money to put in the swimming pool and complete the infrastructure projects around the pool and within the facilities to make this happen. We've developed a plan to carve off about 2.5 acres of land on the left side if you're looking at the club. And in combination, as I said before, with the loan and that sales of that land, we'd be in good shape. So in the slides, you'll see our current property map. You'll also see the A&R plan that was put together by Stamsky and McNary, who we asked to do some work for us. And then you'll see a conceptual subdivision plan that they also put together for us for proposal for 4 lots that would have 2 colonial-style, one colonial-style duplex on each of those 4 lots. So the sale price of that land comes from the estimate value of what it would cost a developer to develop the land, to get it ready for sale, to build the houses, to put in the road, to do all that infrastructure. If you've been there, the land is pitched left. There's a lot of work to do there. So we've done a lot of research with the help of Joe Reddy. And we've also worked with Phil Iliopolis on the legal side of this, and with Evan Belansky on the town side, to take a look at wetlands and property lines and make sure that we are well within our rights and rules and regs to get this project taken care of. So, you know, we started with the planning board. We're here tonight with you folks. Bring it to the Board of Selectmen, and our hope is it will hit town meeting floor. And we are currently zoned open space. We're doing a lot of deep diving historically to figure out the history behind that, but the short version of this story is we are a privately owned club, and we're asking the town to honor the fact that we're landowners, and this is the best way that we can get this done. We're gonna have a nice meeting, we hope, with the neighbors and the abutters next week to really explain that we had a lot of options in different ways that we could make this money come in with the land sale. And we believe this is the one that best benefits the neighborhood. There are a lot of other less desirable options to make this land sale go through. And as someone who's been a member, no lie, of this club for 36 years of his life, I feel like I'm a member even though my house is on the other side of town. And I feel like I'm a neighbor member there. So we are very conscious of the fact that nobody likes a lot of change in their neighborhood. This will equal change. But it will absolutely cement our place for another 40 or 50 years. And have a really nice family club, and we feel as the board of directors that that's important. We feel like we are a unique town. We just heard a great presentation about the center. We have 2 very nice family-oriented swim and tennis clubs, a golf course. We're talking about parks and the beautification of the center of our town. We think that these are cornerstones of our community. Quite frankly, if the pool fails, we have no other option than to sell the whole kit and caboodle because the bonded members own it and have a financial vested interest, and that would be much more devastating to the neighborhood. So we're here just to kind of give you that update, hope that you can back this proposal.
Why is the proposal for duplexes, like the colonial, and not single-family homes?
Basically because if it goes through as a single-family development, it's our understanding that that won't give us the financial gain that we need to make this, hit the $1 million mark.
It's financial consideration based upon the development costs.
It is not necessarily at all spot zoning, as some people have worried about, and it also does fit in. If you look at the club on the right-hand side, there are already colonial duplexes there, and on Turnpike, a very similar project has been done within the past 10, 15 years maybe. So we do feel like we're not just dropping residencies in that don't match the neighborhood.
No.
But
It's
really,
a nice area
it
for
is.
single-family.
It would be
and
great.
nice for this development.
The developers we've worked with through Mr. Reddy have led us to believe we're not gonna get that amount of money for that kind of project.
That's a shame.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Is the town manager approve of this?
I'm not sure he's had an opportunity to speak on it, to be quite honest with you.
This is private property.
This is,
Right,
yeah,
right,
You got no position.
yeah.
right.
So if I look at the map here, and first of all, I'm just gonna plug Russell Mill, wonderful spot.
Thank you.
So if I'm looking at the map, we come down Mill Road, and you're gonna take a left down this street that cul-de-sac that's being created?
Correct, right before our club parking lot, you'll
Okay.
actually take a left into a new road.
Okay, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 separate spots.
Correct.
And in each of those 4 spots, there's gonna be a duplex.
One colonial style duplex, yeah.
So basically 8 families.
Oh, 8 residents, yeah.
8
Correct,
residents,
yeah.
some
Yeah.
type of residents, yes, correct.
And would will that street be a private street, or would that street
I
become
can't speak to that yet, I believe it would start one way and
It'd be a private road.
right.
It'd be private road.
Unless they built it to the full specs of a town road and then requested that it be accepted as a public road. But I think the desire is probably to keep it private.
It's a private road, and so those people would have to pay some sort of fee to,
Whatever the normal
Yeah.
practice is in town already, yeah.
John, would you be able to speak to the tax implications on a change from open space to general residence?
When you have the data of what, it's certainly something we could work on with our assessoring office for a town meeting, but we need some type of estimate of the buildings, and we could look at that.
But definitely an increase in what is capable for that land. Okay. Thank you. All right, anybody else have any questions? All right, Mr. Brinko, thank you very
Thank you, I
much.
appreciate your time, everyone.
thank you, good luck.
All right, now back in order. Review and discussion of warrant articles 15, 16, and 17. Now, this is these are articles that have been brought forward by both the planning board and the board of selectmen, 15, 16, planning board 17. And speaking to both boards, they have not taken a vote on these or position yet, so the town manager will be discussing it. And I've spoken with Chief Spinney, who's here this evening, and also Chief Ryan and Sue Rosa for the Board of Health. Both Chief Ryan and Sue Rosa have given me statements that that they asked me to read into the record, which I'll do after we speak with you.
Just to give you an understanding, and those watching what's gone on here, is obviously back at the 2016 state election, the voters approved narrowly the legalization of recreational marijuana. A few months ago, the legislature and the governor signed into law amendments to the referendum that now become effective on July 1, 2018. And so now the community of Chelmsford has to make a decision on how it wishes to proceed with the issue of recreational marijuana. In summary terms, because the town of Chelmsford, under the new amended state law by the legislature, voted narrowly to oppose recreational marijuana, the town of Chelmsford can, by a majority vote, in this case by the form of a general bylaw, which is Article 15, can vote to prohibit non-medical marijuana establishments in the community. So that's the first article. Had the town voted differently, if the majority had, such as other communities such as, Billerica and Tingsboro and so forth, they would have to go to the ballot for a referendum in the community. So that's how the legislature, in its wisdom, decided to address the issue of local control. The concern that's out there by some is that may be constitutionally suspect. So in dealing with town council and just discussing it with planners and others in the community, that the town felt the best way to approach was to do belt and suspenders. So not only do you have 15, which is the general bylaw amendment to prohibit non-medical marijuana establishments. Article 16 is a zoning bylaw amendment to basically amend the zoning bylaw to provide that restriction as well. The difference with 16 is, again, it amends the zoning code, and any amendments to the zoning code require a 2/3 vote of town meeting. And then Article 17 is the other alternative, that if the town does not wish to prohibit non-medical marijuana establishments, then the prudent course of action is to do what some other communities are doing, which is to establish a moratorium, explore, if the community is to host such locations, where should they be zoned and located? right now, we have medicinal marijuana zoning in place, which was from the earlier law. And so the question would be, you know, where would we now want to put recreational marijuana? The other thing that's about the law that people need to understand is, obviously, you've got different aspects of what marijuana establishments are. It's the retail sale, it's the cultivation, it's, you know, and other aspects of the product itself. However, what also has to be understood is that even if a community such as Chelmsford were to vote no, that they did not want to have establishments in the town of Chelmsford, product can still be brought into the town of Chelmsford from nearby communities by delivery. So, for example, if Chelmsford voted no and said we do not wish to have recreational marijuana establishments in the community, and the city of Lowell did allow them, or the town of Tingsboro did allow them, then someone could, from those establishments, an easy example to visualize would be Drum Hill. As we all know, the town line goes right there by the landfill. Establishment that located in the city of Lowell could service, obviously, Chelmsford people going there, but they could also deliver into the community products, whether it be the raw material or baked goods or other aspects of it could be delivered into the community. So it needs to be recognized that we are going to be impacted by the legalization of recreational marijuana. Chief Spinney is obviously on top of this, and he's going to speak to his personal concerns. You can imagine there are issues in terms of the whole issue of impaired driving. I think there was an SJC court that ruling that came out the other day. Yes.
Yeah.
It basically said, a field sobriety test cannot be used as prima facie evidence
I'm shocked.
for impaired driving with recreational or other marijuana because
Wasn't helpful.
because that's not been conclusively. So we're going to be impacted, and obviously the chief's primary concern in that, and obviously their health concerns, and as you noted, you have the concerns and we know we've been dealing with an opioid epidemic and so forth. The other aspect of the equation is the financial aspect. The other parts of the law is the legislature amended, and the governor's signature amended the law to provide for up to a 3% local excise tax, for lack of anything else, on recreational marijuana sales in the community, and also you can have a 5-year impact fee on sales of marijuana in a community. The closest example that we can look at, and I've charged Mike McCall on this project because of his background, and also he has an interest in this area in terms of the analysis, and he looks to Colorado, which has sort of always been the experience out there because they previously adopted this, and your revenue components on this are uncertain, but you're probably in the six figures, perhaps $200,000 a year, potential revenue impact once things become fully in place. And again, that's Chelmsford obviously is a community that's bisected by 2 highways, and so you would have the ability for people to travel in from outside of the community to purchase, much like a border community such as Tingsboro. It would have a similar thing with the New Hampshire border. So that's about the components of it in terms of it's a societal issue, it's a public safety issue, it's a public health issue, and it's also a revenue consideration. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Spinney, who can speak to the aspects in terms of public safety.
Before we do, Paul, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump ahead.
Sure.
Just for clarification purposes, on Article 17, should 15 and 16 fail, Article 17 states in its language, determine whether they'll prohibit, I'm sorry, make sure I'm at the right spot here. It's in the second paragraph under the temporary moratorium. Determine whether the town shall restrict any or all licenses for recreational marijuana establishments and marijuana retailers. Determine whether the town will prohibit on-site consumption of recreational marijuana and marijuana retailers, and shall consider adopting new provisions on the zoning bylaw. So I guess my question, and just for clarification purposes, is if 15 and 16 say were to fail, does 17 still allow the option for there to be a prohibition on these establishments?
Yeah, it's a moratorium. So basically, it's a temporary prohibition, but the idea is that if you've chosen not to do a permanent prohibition, you can pass 17, and then you could come back at a later date and do a permanent.
And have a permanent,
Right.
That's my question,
Right,
yeah.
yes, you can.
Yeah.
And in fact,
It's basically a delay.
And in fact, the legislature provides, you can only go out about 3 years from the ballot vote and the law becoming effective to exercise this right of of town meeting, in our case, approval, as opposed to ballot approval.
Okay.
So there are explorations, but yes, the law could go the other way. You could study it and then say, you know what, we've studied it further, we don't want to go that way. So what this is a temporary moratorium, which is basically a temporary prohibition, as opposed to a permanent prohibition.
Okay.
And the maximum that we can tax on this, or the town can get, is the 3%?
3%.
We can't then put an additional
No.
tax on it?
No, that's all governed by the law, and in fact.
Nice.
But the 3% can be used however the town.
Yes,
deems
it would
fit. It's
be,
not
it
there's
would be,
restrictions
it
on
would be a local receipt.
As I'm
yeah.
sure we'll hear from other entities there's consideration of increased costs associated with this as well.
Right.
And how much of the 3% would be used in that endeavor.
But we're gonna have costs without the 3%. I mean,
Even without the 3%,
we-
yeah.
We are going to have issues, and the problem is your issues get elevated if you're selling it in town.
Yeah,
I
so
think that's what the
Chief
chief's
Spinney?
here.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for having me. Obviously, I support Article 15 and 16. As the manager just said, Colorado is our looking glass, and there's a lot of data coming out of Colorado. Problem is, a lot of the data refers to results due to the fact that it was legalized in Colorado. And I don't want to focus on that because it's a moot point. It's legal here in Massachusetts. What I want to try to express to this board, the Board of Selectmen, and eventually the town meeting and our entire community are my concerns with regards to what a recreational dispensary and how it will impact this town. So my goal is to give you my stance, my professional opinion as a public safety official in this town, and my concerns as to what potentially we could be dealing with if these dispensaries or a dispensary was to become a reality. So obviously, as police chief, I am concerned with crime. I am concerned with the fear of crime and how it plays into overall quality of life for the residents and visitors of this town. And almost everything we do now at the police department, in fact, I have a division solely dedicated to it, is quality of life concerns. And I think a marijuana recreational dispensary will impact all of those things in a negative fashion. There's no doubt in my mind that a dispensary will result in increased calls for service for the police department. And I can tell you that last year alone, we had over 30,000 police activity incidents in this town. And they're only going to increase, just like the manager just said. We have a lot of new building commencing in this community. The population is going to continue to grow. And we are going to get to a point where the sector map that currently exists for my patrol sectors is going to need another sector. That's just the fact. I think a dispensary will add a significant burden because what's going to happen is a dispensary, unlike many other businesses, is going to bring a significant footprint. And that footprint is going to be large. And that footprint is going to entail suspicious activity. It's going to entail disturbance-type calls. But let me just go by the numbers here with what I've written down, and we'll certainly can revisit anything. First and foremost, I have concerns with regards to criminal activity. There'll be a large volume of people coming into this town for the sole purpose of purchasing marijuana. A lot of those people will not live in Chelmsford. They will not care about Chelmsford. They're going to come here for that reason and that reason only. I can tell you with regards to the Colorado study, it showed a significant increase in violent crime and property crime across the entire state. Primarily focused in Denver, but it was noticed everywhere. Since marijuana dispensaries are primarily a cash and carry business involving two lucrative commodities, that being cash and marijuana, they will become a potential target of crime such as robbery, breaking and entering, and internal and external theft. I guarantee you, as I'm sitting here tonight, there will be diversion. And when I say diversion, I mean illegal sales. And what's going to happen is people will legitimately purchase marijuana from this dispensary, and they will leave that site, and they will sell it. And they will sell it to individuals under 21, and they will make a profit. They are going to sell this marijuana in our neighborhoods. They're going to sell them behind buildings, and it's absolutely going to happen. That is a guarantee, because we have that now with no dispensaries. So you plant a dispensary in this community, it's a foregone conclusion that that problem will increase, which will result in more calls for suspicious activity. Obviously, the sales are illegal, requiring a response, and it just kind of exponentially goes from there. In addition to that, like the manager mentioned, that you have the impaired driving factor, which has just been significantly hindered by the SJC. The liquor violations, there's field sobriety tests that have been nationally recognized as being accepted to show impairment. So the court has ruled that marijuana does not fall into a recognized impaired state. There's been no tests that have now been designed to be 100% accurate. So that causes a problem. But more importantly, I'm concerned with the potential of individuals entering our community, potentially impaired, whether they've already ingested marijuana and they're coming to Chelmsford to get more. That could be a potential problem. I will say that again in Colorado, drug-related traffic fatalities increased, and OUI by marijuana increased. But just as important as the crime element, again, is the quality of life. And I think it'll be negatively impacted by any neighborhoods near these dispensaries. You will have loitering, you will have public use of marijuana, you will have odor complaints, you will see traffic congestion, you will have noise, you will have vandalism, and again, we will see an increase in just overall disturbance type of calls. And again, depending on where we put these dispensaries, whether this community decides to put them in a industrial park zone type of environment or on Drum Hill Road, neighborhoods will be affected. So those are my primary concerns. I will say that I've spoken with Board of Health Director Sue Rosa, and she has, I know you've received documentation from her, but I think it is worth mentioning that I've come across this data as well. Marijuana-infused products, you can infuse pretty much anything with marijuana. Candies, gummy bears, brownies, cookies. These can very likely fall into the hands of children. These type of dispensaries oftentimes display these items in their windows. Pets get a hold of these items. There's been many instances where dogs and cats have passed away as a result of accidental ingestion. The studies in Colorado showing schools affected by increased absenteeism, discipline issues, higher suspension rates have occurred, overall medical problems with the population, and I think that the manager mentioned this. This could not be a worse timing for our region with the opioid crisis. Chelmsford, I've said this a million times, we are not immune. We've had our 4th fatality this year alone. We've had about 32 overdoses. I think it's an absolute wrong message to send. And I'll end with, I grew up in this community as well, right through the school system, and I care about this town's character. And I think this would have an adverse effect on that as well. And I'll end it there.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Any questions for the chief? Otherwise,
I have a couple. One thing you mentioned about public smoking, what is the law that's just been passed?
You can't do it anywhere that smoking's prohibited, and my understanding that there's no public, like right now, you couldn't light up a marijuana cigarette in our common either.
Okay.
Similar to open carry?
Right.
Yeah. Open container rather, not
So
open carry.
so it's similar to public drinking, like out
Correct.
on the street, okay.
Right.
And then, with the new SGC ruling, and the fact that there really is no 100% way of determining if somebody's driving while impaired, how do you proceed to handle such cases? Because regardless of if we put, as Paul said, regardless if we put one of these facilities in our town, it's coming to our town.
All right, so there's a couple of answers to that. Number one is, I'm not overly concerned with what the courts do with these people. I'm not overly concerned with whether they're convicted. So regardless of what happens at court, we'll make car stops, we'll take people off the road that are impaired. That's the most important thing.
Right.
So they don't keep driving.
Right.
So that's a done issue. It makes it problematic for us prosecution-wise, but that's
Let the
days,
DA
months,
handle that?
weeks later.
Yeah.
The other solution is, there's drug recognition experts that can get certified, and I have an officer attending that school in the near future. So you're gonna see police departments now across the Commonwealth do that, have their officers certified as an expert, and now as an expert, they will be able to testify as to their observations of impairment. Our hope is, down the road, the state will develop a marijuana test, just like the breath machine, that can be conducted either roadside or at the police facility to
Non-invasive?
show.
Like-
Well, it would have to be something either saliva-based or, I don't see how it could be breath, but anything's possible. Yeah, it wouldn't be drawing blood,
Right.
because we'd have to go to a facility, a medical facility for that, but that's, I have no idea when that's gonna happen, but the drug recognition option is immediate. But to answer your question, it's not gonna stop, the person from being arrested. It's just it's problematic prosecution, though.
Okay,
A lot of case dismissals potentially, but it doesn't
Right.
affect the actual
Right.
stopping.
right.
Now, you have 3 articles on marijuana, is that correct?
There are 3 on the warrant, yes.
And you're for the first 2?
Well, I'd be for the last one, 17, if 15 and 16 are defeated.
Yeah, if all 3 of them fail, we've got a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And obviously, if
Then we
if
have
the
no
best
regulation.
this community makes the decision that it's the strongest course of action is to delay it a year, then that's obviously better than immediate acceptance.
So if 15 and 16 pass, then 17 can be
We'd
removed.
ask no action. Yeah, we'd ask no action on 17 if that were to happen.
Be a little redundant.
Yeah, I know, I'm just,
I have another question. So, since you can get delivery, which I think is hysterical, but is there a way to stop that from happening in the town? So there's no, it's not like
I think so.
cross-state line
State
things?
law.
It's not even a law that they can do it, it's not illegal. So
Right.
we have no vehicle to facilitate that.
So you could order a pizza
Right,
Right.
and
your
pot
marijuana.
brownies, right, yeah,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, it's still illegal federally, but it's not illegal
Right.
statewide, yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong,
You
Mr.
get the
Manager,
order
but it is possible that the Board of Health could place some restrictions on some of the edibles with regards to a dispensary license. I'm not sure. I know.
Well, it
that-
depends where they're manufactured.
Yeah.
That's the old question. If you're producing material for human consumption, then obviously that has to be licensed and regulated, but what you're gonna likely see on this, and you saw this with the medical, it's gonna be big business. This isn't going to be Sal and Mary's, recreational marijuana shop. This is big business, and
And this is
so
gonna be like,
therefore, they'll-
Hostess.
Therefore, right, so exactly, so they won't be coming in and having a problem with the local Board of Health. They're gonna be state certified. And that's,
so in our surrounding communities, what is happening in our surrounding communities?
well, to the best of my knowledge, the city of Lowell has licensed medicinal marijuana. The expectation is that they will license recreational marijuana. I think we've heard that the town of Tingsboro is going forward with the licensing of recreational marijuana. But Wicker is going to a moratorium for fall town, their fall town meeting. When I spoke to the managers in Westford, they weren't sure what they were doing yet. And again, I'm uncertain as to what Tewksbury's doing as well. But the bottom line is the communities have to prepare with something because it becomes effective next July 1. And the problem is if you go to town meeting in April, and you know how the process is, town meeting passes, we're at April, we don't leave town meeting till May 3rd, let's say, as a rough number. Then the town clerk submits that to the Attorney General on May 10th. Then they have 90 days to approve it. You're already into the new year. So your towns don't want to be exposed to the fact that the July 1 date comes and they're coming in and seeking licensing because you have nothing in place in terms of zoning or regulations or restrictions. So that's why you're seeing the push in the fall now, so the communities can get ahead of it. But you couldn't go earlier because the legislature didn't finish its work till August. So that's why we're
That's why you're seeing the votes too, that you see in the news recently.
yeah.
Now, didn't they limit the number of licenses they're allowing within the state?
Yeah, it's a factor upon your number of liquor
I
licenses.
thought it was 20% of what
20%,
you have,
yeah.
or 8, it came out to be we could have as many as 8 in this town.
Goodness,
down.
okay.
Is that before or after the 10 extra liquor licenses we got? Yeah, just wondering.
Right, yeah.
So Lowell would have,
A lot?
A lot, yeah.
But if they chose to, I mean,
Well, think about
they could have
that.
had, they could have had more medicinal ones either, and
That's
they,
true.
there wasn't a need for it. I mean, people will travel.
But you got a quarter of the city,
Or
UMass
not even
Lowell.
travel,
I
just
mean,
go.
Or have it delivered, right, yeah, I don't think there'll be an issue of communities bumping up against their quota. It's because I think it's going to be big business. It's not going to be like I
It's
said,
gonna be production.
Yeah, it's not gonna be like variety stores. These are people, because when you, as Chief Spinney noted, it's a cash business, and you've got a valuable inventory. So the places are fortresses in terms of security-wise. Therefore, to make that investment in
Why is it a
security
cash
and
business?
product
It's a
and
cash,
handling cash, because the
It's
federal
It's
federal
federally illegal,
government,
you can't.
the
have
banks
that.
aren't
national
gonna
banks
touch
are
it.
gonna fund you.
Right.
They aren't gonna hold your money.
And
The
could you
credit
It's
imagine
still
them
illegal.
filing a federal tax return?
Right,
Yeah, good luck.
right. So now you got, so now you have the issue of people delivering the stuff, and it becomes, it's like the robberies of the pizza delivery man.
Yeah.
Well, now you've got this person who you know is carrying cash, you're not gonna have a
And-
sign on
and
the, you're not gonna have the
marijuana.
sign on the truck saying this driver only carries $20 less. Yeah, so it's a concern.
Yeah.
It's big, it is big money too.
Oh, it's very big money.
The amounts of marijuana it's a lot more.
Yeah, it is.
And we saw that, I mean, when we dealt with the municipal marijuana, and they met with the chief and the Board of Health, and they'd stop in, I mean, they had elaborate security plans. I mean, it was tighter than a military base. I mean, that's how, because again, what they're dealing with in terms of cash and inventory.
So the local governments can get 3%. What is the state gonna collect?
17.
Yeah, I think it's 17%.
17, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, this is like a cash cow.
Which is better than the 5% they had in the vote
That's
initially.
right, yeah.
It's the only way you get these things
It's
passed,
roughly a
though,
20%
is
excise.
to make it revenue.
Yeah.
So then the state, we don't know what the state's gonna do with their 17% as far as supporting.
Well,
Local government
the
or whatever.
idea in the discussion that they've had is to help put in place regulation, but, the state,
You've got a license.
I mean, money's fungible.
Yeah.
yeah, and how much does the state charge on cigarettes tax?
I don't know, I don't
A lot,
smoke.
probably.
Yeah.
I don't smoke, so.
All right, if no one has more questions for Chief Spinney, I have,
I have a question.
okay.
Do you have any statistics as to the spike in violent crime as a result of recreational marijuana?
Like I said, the Colorado study was like a 300-page study. It probably did have the exact percentage increase, but I was moving through that quickly, and I just kind of focused on the fact that it was an increase. I know it did fluctuate by city.
So, Chief, the statement I'm gonna read from Sue Rosa has a lot of that information
Okay,
in there.
well, because I gave it to her.
Well, there you go.
Can I just ask one question? Do you have any information about, from Colorado, anything like towns that didn't have it but had to add X amount of law enforcement versus if they had it, they had to add?
Well, I just know there was a large section on calls, their resources being taxed to do additional calls because of the dispensaries, taking them away from other issues. But I don't have a number for you. I just know that was across the board.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, it's gonna be taxed on us whether or not we decide.
Yeah.
One more question, I'm sorry. Have there been studies also on the impact on the value of real estate?
I have not
I
seen
haven't seen
that.
anything.
No.
When it's a medical marijuana, since that's been around for a while, when there's a medical marijuana dispensary, does it affect real estate?
I haven't seen,
Has it in the
I haven't
past?
seen any.
No?
It's a different beast, though, too.
No, I understand, I just didn't know if it did,
Yeah.
that might at least give us an idea.
Again, you would zone it. I mean, if the town were to do this, they would zone areas of town, so you wouldn't have them in primarily residential neighborhoods, you would believe. You wouldn't have them in near churches. You'd be looking at industrial or commercial zones, similar to what happened with the medicinal
Yeah.
marijuana locations, so. So you wouldn't, but Yeah, so you wouldn't have it wouldn't be the neighbor, it's going to
Right.
be the spillover into the neighborhoods.
I'm afraid to ask. Any further questions for Chief Spinney? Okay, all right, so without further questions for Chief Spinney, I'm gonna read the two emails and statements I've received, one from Chief Ryan and one from Sue Rosa. I'm gonna start with Chief Ryan's. His actually takes a different kind of aspect, look at it from the fire and safety perspective. So I'll start with that first, and then we can go back into a lot of the public safety and health concerns that are brought up by Sue Rosa in her statement, which we now know was provided to her by Chief Spinney.
Well, she did do the research.
She
I
did.
sent her the material, that's all.
No, she did. She has a lot of comments to your research. So she's actually, well, you'll see. She's related it to their current efforts. So the first one is an email from Chief Ryan. Hi, Jim. Thanks for providing me with the opportunity to weigh in on this topic. I've attached some of my concerns for your review. Please call with any questions. And I'll provide a copy of that to you, man. Oh, yes, no, we're going to be here a while. Marijuana from the Chelmsford Fire Department concerns. Thanks for reaching out to me for my concerns. As the marijuana industry continues to gain ground, the National Fire Prevention Association has convened a task group comprised of the marijuana industry leaders, equipment managers, and fire officials, mostly from Colorado, to craft a new chapter regulating marijuana growth and processing. A lot of the jurisdictions like Chelmsford are looking for guidance documents in the new NFPA regulation, which is NFPA 1, Chapter 38, marijuana growing, processing, or extraction facilities, has a publication date of fall 2018. My review of data from Colorado area fire departments note the following issues and concerns. First bullet, there are now approximately 1,000 licensed medical and recreational pot dispensaries in Colorado, outpacing the number of Starbucks, which is currently 239. Inspections. In 2010, the Denver Fire Department was overwhelmed with code inspections. A number of the under-the-radar grow operators refused to address code violations. As a result, marijuana-related summons and court appearances occupied inspectors' time. As a result, the Denver Fire Department created a separate marijuana inspection team, paid for by the marijuana licensing fees and taxes. Extraction concerns. In addition to growing marijuana, the principal activity of the pot industry is extraction, where THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the chemical responsible for most of marijuana's psychological effects, is separated from the plant and processed into hash oil. The extraction process involves using flammable liquids, butane and propane, and can be fraught with potential hazards if not conducted properly. In 2013, the U.S. Fire Administration, a division of FEMA, also identified increased incidents of explosions from hash oil production. In March 2014, the Tewksbury Fire Department responded to a house explosion involving the production of hash oil. There's a link that you can provide through the Wilson story. Atmospheric. Carbon dioxide is often artificially introduced to an indoor grow area to assist with the plant growth. Carbon dioxide is an asphyxiant that will create an oxygen-deficient atmosphere. In addition, ozone generators are commonly used to reduce or eliminate the odor from indoor growing operations. According to the Connecticut Department of Public Health, ozone is a gas that can cause respiratory issues. Electrical. The amount of electricity needed for a cultivation operation can easily exceed that of other types of businesses. If the cultivation facility moves into an existing building, there's a strong likelihood that the electrical panel will require upgrading. This is to accommodate the required power needed to cultivate plants utilizing grow lamps, and ventilation equipment. In Colorado, fire departments have encountered overloaded electrical circuits that have led to fires. In addition, flammable gases and liquids often used for marijuana oil extraction have the potential to create an explosive environment for which the electrical system can be an ignition source. Environmental. Marijuana facilities must implement and maintain appropriate ventilation and filtration systems. The high levels of humidity will lead to the growth of a dangerous fungus and molds that present a respiratory health hazard to firefighters and inspector services. And finally, egress concerns. The installation of security features is very important to marijuana facilities, as was addressed. A marijuana facility must balance the need for security with the egress needs of the public, employees, and fire department access. It is critical that the facility complies with the requirements of the fire building codes. So those were the concerns and comments from the fire department and Chief Ryan. Next statement is from Sue Rosa from the Board of Public Health. Hi, Jim. Thank you so much for inviting us to provide feedback on these warrant articles. Unfortunately, with the notice, both Rich and I have other commitments and are unable to attend. I can say that both Rich and I support Article 15 and 16 on the list of warrant articles for fall annual town meeting. If Articles 15 and 16 are voted yes, then of course there is no vote on 17. However, if Articles 15 are voted no, then we would of course vote a yes for Article 17. As you know from some of our past meetings, the Board of Health works diligently in town to provide awareness and prevention education on substance abuse. This Sunday is our 4th annual overdose vigil on the Common. I feel strongly that if we allow recreational marijuana in Chelmsford, it will completely undermine all of our efforts and what we have been focusing on since 2009. I've attached a document with specific points related to the public health impact that I feel support our perspective on not allowing recreational marijuana facilities in Chelmsford. My data is from a study done from the impact on Colorado. For each piece of data, I reference that what Chelmsford BOH has been doing with our community partners around prevention and education. These will be points I will bring up at town meeting. Please let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate you let me know what the FinCom decision is on your recommendations for each article. Thank you and have a good evening, Sue. This is much longer. Facts and statistics for the effects of legalized recreational marijuana use on public health and the report on the impact of recreational marijuana use in Colorado. The Board of Health in Chelmsford does not support recreational marijuana facilities in town of Chelmsford. Some concerns from the BOH is an increase in marijuana use among youth and young adults, negative health and brain development effects in children and adolescents, potential harm to young children, increase in marijuana impaired driving fatalities, rise in number of marijuana addicted users in treatment, adverse impact and cost of the physical and mental health damage caused by marijuana use. The economic cost to society will far outweigh any potential revenue generated. Comparative information taken from the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, the impact. Volume 4, September 2016 data report for the Colorado prepared by the Rocky Mountain HIDTA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, Investigative Support Center, Strategic Intelligence Unit. Number 1, youth past month marijuana use in Colorado increased 20% in the 2-year average from 2013-14 since Colorado legalized recreational marijuana compared to the 2-year average prior to legalization in 2011 and 12. The Chelmsford BOH works diligently to provide educational programs for the youth population to prevent substance abuse and misuse. The latest 2013-14 results show Colorado youth ranked number 1 in the nation for past month marijuana use, up from number 4 in 2011-12 and 14 in 2005 and 6. The Chelmsford BOH has collaborated with the schools since 2009 to provide prevention education programs to prevent substance abuse. This year, Healthy Futures provides grades 5 through 8 with a 2-part series of evidence-based substance use prevention education, as October has been declared Substance Use Prevention Month in the town of Chelmsford. 3, college-age past month marijuana use increased 17% in the 2-year average 2013-14 since Colorado legalized recreational marijuana compared to the 2-year average prior to legalization in 11-12. Nationally, college-age past month marijuana use increased 2% during the same time frame. So it's 17%, 2%. Difference. The town of Chelmsford actively collaborates with many coalitions and task force to prevent substance abuse and misuse, and college-age students are included in our mission of prevention. 4, emergency department rates likely related to marijuana increased 49% in the 2-year average from 2013-14, since marijuana legalized recreational marijuana compared to the 2-year average prior to legalization in 11 and 12. Chelmsford is an active participant in the district attorney's opioid task force, on which there are several members from local hospitals and emergency medicine working toward preventing substance use and misuse. Number 5, a study published in the JAMA Pediatrics Journal found that, quote, in Colorado, the rates of marijuana exposure in young children, many of them toddlers, have increased 150% since 2014, when recreational marijuana products like sweets went on the market legally, end quote. Symptoms from those intentional exposures can be anything from lethargy or agitation to vomiting and loss of balance. Quote, a handful of patients were admitted to intensive care units and intubated, end quote. Children and infants are among most vulnerable populations in our community, and inadvertent exposures may put our children at risk for injury, for incidental poisoning, and effects of marijuana. 6, American Academy of Pediatrics AAP opposed legalization. In a policy statement issued by the American Academy of Pediatrics, the organization declares their recommendations regarding legalization of marijuana in regard to the effects on our youth. Quote, given the data supporting the negative health and brain development effects of marijuana in children and adolescents ages 0 through 21 years, the AAP is opposed to marijuana use in this population, end quote. Additionally, adolescents ages 0 to 21 years, the AAP is opposed to marijuana use in this population, end quote. Additionally, the AAP declares that they, quote, oppose legalization of marijuana because of the potential harms to children and adolescents. The Chelmsford BOH delivers an educational program to our youth population titled, quote, Brain Drain, end quote, to educate students on the effects of marijuana and other substances on brain development. Hospital rates likely related to marijuana use increased 32% in the two-year average 13 to 14 since Colorado legalized recreational marijuana compared to the two-year average prior to legalization 11-12. Chelmsford is an active participant in the District Attorney's Opioid Task Force, in which there are several members from local hospitals and emergency medicine working towards preventing substance use and misuse. 8, a study published in September 2015 in the journal,
Sure.
it caught me, Diabetologia, found that people who use marijuana 100 times or more as young adults were 40% more likely to develop prediabetes in middle age compared with individuals who never used the drug. The Chelmsford BOH recognizes November as Diabetes Awareness Month and coordinates a library series on diabetes for the community, as well as a special screening educational program for seniors for diabetes awareness. 9. Data in support of the Pueblo Hospital's position in Colorado includes a 51% increase in the number of children ages 18 and younger that have been treated at Parkview's emergency room, as well as the fact that nearly half the newborns who were tested for prenatal drug exposure in March 2016 at St. Mary Corwin tested positive for marijuana. Chelmsford is an active participant in the district. It's the same statement regarding the opioid task force. 10, the prevalence of marijuana use in the U.S. more than doubled between 2001 and 2013, according to a published study published in October 2015 by JAMA Psychiatry. Hospital utilization related to the drug appears to have increased in tandem, according to the new analysis presented at the American Public Health Association's annual meeting held in Chicago in November 2015. Again, Chelmsford is an active participant in that task force. 11, according to a recent study on the economic impact of marijuana use in Colorado from 2009 to 2014, Penrose St. Francis Hospital in Colorado Springs, Colorado, reported a true loss of $20 million in uncollected charges. Additionally, the study demonstrated an increasing number of patients who are seen in the emergency room also have used cannabis. These patients are not always able to pay their bills, resulting in financial loss to the hospital. The financial burden on already overburdened local hospitals will affect all patients who seek care within our community. 12, Denver health therapist at a substance abuse clinic, quote, "What I'm hearing from children is that it's legal, it's okay to use now, and it's also natural. And because it's legal and their families and adult friends are using it, they feel like it's justified. And what they're doing is they're using so much of it now, they're kind of getting bored with it and graduating on something stronger. This is just what I'm seeing in Bruce Randolph alone. I can't speak for the state of Colorado," end quote. The town of Chelmsford conducts a youth risk behavior survey to assess the risks and behaviors of youth population in our town. We educate our students on dangers of marijuana and in particular acting as a gateway drug. Some of our data is reflective of this data in that some students perceive that cannabis is not dangerous if it is natural, which increases their likelihood of use. 13, and finally, Denver Health Clinic youth are male, I think there's a missing word there. Denver Health Clinic youth male, 73.6%, mean age 15.8 years, and they're primarily for cannabis use disorder. I'm guessing that's Denver Health Clinic youth admittance, I'm guessing is the word missing, 98.1%. Other psychiatry diagnosis includes attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The Chelmsford BOH provides educational library series for the community as well as programs tailored for the schools regarding anxiety, depression, and ADHD. The town pays $12,000 per year, expense share between BOH town and school department for William James College Interface, CERIS, to provide resources to assist those struggling with any mental health issues. Anxiety and depression are already the two top diagnoses that people seek treatment for through this interface. And just as a note here at the end, the state of Washington data. Washington legalized recreational marijuana at the same time as Colorado. The reader is encouraged to review data from Washington on the impact of legalization in that state. Many of the same trends in Colorado related to their legal marijuana also are occurring in Washington. These trends include impaired driving, traffic fatalities, and use among teens and exposure. And that ends everything I was asked to read into the record. Any questions? Although I can't answer them. Any questions for Chief Spinney now that I've read those? All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have moved up, we have actually two sections of public comment this evening. Normally, we hold public comment at the end of our meetings. However, given that we are voting on all these articles tonight that have financial impact, we have placed public comment now, so that anyone that wants to speak to any of the articles for which we'll be voting, they can do so now. We will not debate, however, we will entertain any statements from the public. I ask when you do come forward that you state your name and either your position or your address.
Glenn Diggs, 220 Wellman Avenue, member of the Board of Selectmen. I'll try to be brief. I just want to speak about the economic development position. And really, I'm here just to talk about it in general in terms of the fact that, I think it's a misconception to feel that there's a discord between the Board of Selectmen and the EDC. I think that we are both in tune with the idea of what should be done. I think that there was a misconception early on that the Board of Selectmen envisioned the position more as a deal maker. I think we envisioned the person as a strong person, but I think that as we got to talk together, it really came out that really we were talking about the same thing, and that what we were talking about is a facilitator, someone who brings whatever resources to the table that need to be brought to achieve a certain result. And I think that the key letter in facilitator is the R, which means relationships. This person has to form relationships with not only public people, with private people, with developers, with owners, with government officials, both elected, appointed, hired, both at the state level, the federal level, the town, city level, that they have to reach out to everyone and bring to the table whatever they need to bring in terms of departments, in terms of people in town, the finance committee, the planning board, the Board of Health, whoever needs to be brought to the table to satisfy a need that someone who's interested in the town needs to know about and have a stake in the ultimate ideas. And that's really what it's about. And I think we have all eventually come to that the facilitator is what we're looking for. Just to talk about two things that came up in your questions tonight. One was about the idea of hiring someone more of a short-term or a consultant to see what would happen if it really is worthwhile going forward with the position. And there are two problems that I saw that I didn't think was brought up. One is that you didn't have the opportunity to look at the job qualifications. The job qualifications are pretty stiff in terms of what we would be looking for. This is not a puppy. This is someone who's very seasoned, probably spent some time in the government, at the state level, working in economic matters. Someone who has knowledge of all the laws related to it, knowledge of zoning and all kinds of things, a strong academic background, a strong arbitrator feeling, someone that understands that when you're going out and trying to create something, you're going to get a lot of no's, but no is never no to a really dedicated person. A no is not now. And that person gets the opportunity to come back again and again and again. And eventually that no is now. And that's what it's about. And that takes a long time. That the results, you can't judge this person on the results of tomorrow or the next day, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. It's a long-term process. And the person needs to find their way and develop those relationships. And I think that that's what would be found here. That part of their job description is that they would provide reports or presentations to various committees, Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, whatever, just in terms of what's going on so that you would understand what their developments are and if the money's being well spent. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the salary. You know, we had talked in a joint meeting about 80,000 was appropriate level. 80,000 is about level 1 on level 7. That's about the first step. And in any kind of job position, which is not a entry-level position, typically there's some range, depending on who you see. You may see someone who's a very, very strong candidate, but is slightly out of your range, or someone who is less so. But if you're going to spend that money anyway, you should have the opportunity to pay a little bit more for someone better. And that it would normally be better to set the figure slightly higher at a mid-range. Level 7 goes from 80 to 100, but set it in the middle, let's say 80 to 90. And based on the quality of the people that you get to apply, then you pick from that. You're relying on the selection committee to spend the town's money wisely, but if you set a definite limit on it, they can't go above that because that's what the town approved. So anyway, again, my goal was just to impress upon you that we are all on the same page, and that I think in the end, the facilitator is going to do a great job for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none. We're on to the review, discussion, and vote on financial warrant articles. Does everyone want to soldier through? We want to take a 5-minute break? It's up to everybody here.
I say we soldier through.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock, so let's get.
All right, let's go.
Let's get cranking.
Would you like a motion for each article and then discussion?
Yeah, I think we're going to have, logistically, I think a motion for each article and then discussion and a vote, yes. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 1, which is the recommendation for allocation of free cash. The total certified balance is $1,076,000, no?
The Article 1 is the report of town officers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think the first thing I'm sorry is going to be Article 2.
Article.
Regarding the transfer of available funds from the school department.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Article 2 is the E-rate, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Article 2. I make a motion that we accept Article 2, the E-rate revenue to the school department in the sum of $35,035 from free cash to the school department.
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? All right, on to,
Article 4?
yes, there's no action on Article 3, I believe. Article 4?
Article 4, I make a motion that we,
Actually, before, I'm sorry, the motion, is there any action on Article 3?
No, no action.
No, okay, just want to make sure. I know there was the potential of something potentially happening. All right.
okay, so I make a motion that we accept Article 4, Stormwater Management Enterprise Fund, that the amount of Article 14 in the spring annual town meeting be reduced by the total appropriation to the amount of 0.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none.
Believe the next article is 6.
5, no action,
5 is no action.
correct?
Well, 5, you need a technical action on 5.
We don't know yet, right?
Yeah,
That's for the salary for stormwater?
what we have,
Yes, please.
You need a technical correction on Article 5, the operating budget, because the fact that you had a stormwater enterprise budget that was gonna have indirect costs in terms of benefits in the operating budget, we now have to remove
Amend the
that,
budget, yeah.
amend that vote to remove the stormwater enterprise, revenues and replace it with the levy.
if you remember back from town meeting, which I know was several months back, it was about roughly best I know, about 285,177, that
Yep.
sounds correct. And that was stormwater indirect costs that were being applied to offset that small portion of the general fund budget. So that's what we need to
Right,
undo.
so what we did is, well, John did, I think it's credit, because he did the work, but we went to the Department of Revenue and said, look, we don't want to get through town meeting and then submit the tax rate for approval and have an issue with this unbundling of the stormwater situation. So we sent them the motions and had them review them, and they basically pointed out, they said, look, there's a safe way and there's a safest way, right, John? It's probably the
Right,
best way to
exactly,
describe it. And I think the safest way is to open up Article 5 and to eliminate the appropriation for the indirect benefit costs, which were 285,177, as a funding source, because again, remember, that was gonna pay for those benefits. And now we would amend that vote to have the 285,177, from the levy. And you say, well, why is that if you're not doing the stormwater thing? Is because we were apportioning a costs such as the pension assessment and so forth to the stormwater operation. Things like the pension assessment for Middlesex is done in arrears. So in other words, the fact that we don't have a stormwater effect doesn't mean our pension assessment is going down this year. Because you remember, they do it on a 2-year actuarial valuation. So the money that we were gonna use as the offset goes away. So therefore, we eliminate the appropriation of stormwater indirect costs as a stormwater enterprise fund revenue source. We now have to replace it with the levy as the revenue source. That's probably the best way to summarize it, right, John?
Yeah, that's how I would describe it.
Okay, so get my,
So it's not an increase in the operating budget, is that we have to do the technical correction to the funding source for the budget.
Diversion of source.
Diversion, exactly.
So I guess that a properly tailored vote should be diversion of source to amend
Diversion of source.
to amend the operating budget for the 285,177.
Exactly.
But I can't bring the motion.
okay.
Can she say what you said?
I would like to make a motion under Article 5, did you say diversion? Is that the
Diversion of
term?
source.
285.
280, a diversion of funds out of the stormwater? No, diversion of funds of
Funding source.
totaling 285,177.
From the indirect charges from the stormwater enterprise fund to the levy.
Okay,
What he
thank
said.
you.
What he said.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Pam,
completes
is
the
that sufficient?
motion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I
thank you.
second that.
Any discussion?
Right.
I think this is just a technicality, quite frankly. But it's an important one, yeah. All those in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none. Okay, now we can go on to the next
Okay,
article.
so Article 6 is I make a motion that we approve Article 6, Economic Development Position, that the town raise and appropriate 40,000 in personnel costs and 10,000 for expenses for the employment of an economic development position.
Second.
Discussion. I think we've heard a lot about this in the last couple of weeks and in the weeks prior.
I'm happy with the compromise they came up with.
Yeah, the description I'm a little bit more comfortable with now that I've heard it. I was a little less comfortable last week. I think it makes sense. I think this, if this were, I was less comfortable when we were talking about deal making. And whether or not this is a contract versus a full-time position. I think I'm a little bit, like I said, a little bit more comfortable with how it's described tonight. That's where I stand, at least.
I'm still not comfortable with this article as it's written. I feel that it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't provide all the costs that go behind it, like such as indirect costs that would impact the 40,000. And also, I think that this position, I would like to see the requirements for the position behind it, and also maybe have I still think that a trial period or a trial period temporary person with a transition, so that we could have a strong employee behind the project would be great. I'm behind the EDC project 100%, but I just don't think as this stance is,
So I'm absolutely against this hiring a headcount. I'm fully for spending $100,000 and giving them $100,000 to spend, whether it's for associations, whether it's for promotional material, to get businesses here. Don't mind spending that money. I don't want to add additional headcount. We have a town manager who I know works a million hours, but we also have an assistant town manager. I think if we kind of dig down, I think spreading this position amongst the whole department, and joining the right associations, I think will go a lot farther. My fear is the type of person that we want to bring in, 100,000 is not going to get them here. I think in this economy, we're going to get a B player for $100,000. You want, from what Glenn went through and what he wanted for this position, that's a $300,000 person. And I just don't think this is the right time to be hiring.
But in that same aspect, I don't think that's on par with what we're seeing in the other communities and what they're doing. The $300,000 position, I'd love to make $300,000 too. I'd sign up for that right away. I don't think that's realistic or anywhere near what we're looking at currently. I think they're looking at, it's no longer deal make. It's not. I think the change is in the ideology behind what this position is, and not. If we're a deal maker and we were going out and selling the town, I do believe you're right, that this isn't the right time or position or the cost. I think what we heard from both the presentation on August 29th and also from tonight from the discussions with the EDC and the BOS is that they need more manpower over there to handle what's going on currently, because we have this new economic development on 129, and we also want to focus on Route 40 and the mills in North Chelmsford. We want to focus on those other areas of town where we want to increase the activity. As we heard, we have an auction coming up down in 129. We have the DCU moving in. We have Mercury moving out. We're starting to see some activity, and while we're seeing activity, yeah, that's great, but we need someone to be there to be a contact position for them. And as was described tonight, perform those long-term relationships and be a lead contact person, focusing on a lot of retention going forward. I don't think we have that person right now, or at least we don't have enough manpower to completely address that situation, and that's my concern.
Yeah, I just don't think this is the right time to be bringing on headcount. I don't think we're gonna get the right headcount in here. I think we'll get a B player in this economy. There's no, I'd rather spend this money differently. Like, I don't wanna say no to the money, because it's not the money. I think the money is a good investment. I just don't think it's the right investment is a headcount.
right.
That to me is where, if it was a different economy, if it was 8 years ago when, there was high unemployment and we could get really good candidates, then yeah, maybe that is the right investment at that time, but not now. I mean, the unemployment, it's negative, it's zero.
I've got a question for the Economic Development Commission, sort of related to that if it's possible, but to the point of, I think we just gave them the money to get started with the marketing materials and things like that, and I think at some point they had envisioned expanding that into either a consultant or a position, but they weren't there yet, and I think the Board of Selectmen made a strong push to get somebody on sooner, and I'm just wondering was this a little too soon for you, or are you still comfortable with this, even though you hadn't even finished kind of your first phase of the funding we gave you last year? That's kind of my...
Yeah, Donald, if you're comfortable coming up and speaking to that.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Thank you.
Donald Van Dyne, Economic Development Committee. To answer your question, Matt, yes, it was pushed forward from the Board of Selectmen. However, the EDC has taken the position that now is a good time, and the reason being is that for all the reasons that Jim just mentioned, we have the economic development team, right? So as Mike mentioned this evening, it's made up of the town manager's office, it's made up the community development office, and you have the 7 members of the EDC. Now is the right time because we have all the team, but as Jim mentioned, we don't have somebody that's concentrated full-time that's going out and beating the pavement and talking with the stakeholders, being the business owners and being the possible new tenants to the 129 area, the brokers, someone that's going to bring the business back into our front door. We don't have that now. Not only that, but that's the attraction piece of it, it's a retention piece as well. These partnerships that Jim and everybody's been talking about this evening, that's paramount to the success, not just today, but going forward. So the investment's necessary today, and we worked with the Board of Selectmen, as you know, and I believe we've crafted a job description that's going to address the priorities of the Board of Selectmen, the EDC, and foremost, the town of Chelmsford going forward. It's an investment that needs to be made today that is not going to pay off for about another 3 or 4 years.
And having this position, it's gonna change how you're going to maybe use that money a little bit, or how you're gonna think about, you're gonna expand your role moving forward, you're gonna more partner with this position. Is that the intent now?
As far as?
The money that you were already given and the plans that you had, you're gonna now have to tailor those around having a new staff person involved. A new staff person in town hall is gonna directly report with you. And so you've started those discussions already, you're gonna plan around that now.
Yes, but what will happen is the RFP will hopefully be awarded, and there's still a time where we still need to build up, educate the individual, no matter who's hired. They probably don't know Chelmsford as well as the 10 people that are already at the table. So there's an educational piece to the RFP, and then when this person is hired, by December, January, then we will be in the process now of putting together the collateral materials. And keep in mind though, it's, if you will, if it's a sales position, if you go work for me tomorrow and I'm selling something, we're not gonna craft all new material just because Matt came on board. We're going to then give you the material and say, this is what you're selling, right?
To me, what I heard, I mean, I thought $80,000, it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but what I heard was they have a volume of work that needs to be addressed, and some of it isn't as high, let's say, executive or go-getter as what some people's visions are, but they have this volume of work that needs to be accomplished, and that the salary range seems appropriate for that, and that it's a growth position, and it has a range, and so it's an opportunity for someone to grow in the role and accommodate the need to get this program going, and will get return on investment, versus someone that is like the, ultimate high-end executive that would be supposedly coming with business in their back pockets. I just don't think that that's the type of thing that's gonna happen. I think
That's
it's.
the kind of person gets bored with the job way
Right,
too soon.
right.
You
I
lose the
think,
continuity.
yeah, what I heard was there is a volume of work that is necessary to start building this crescendo of what we ultimately want happening, and they feel that that there's been a compromise between the two groups presenting what they want, and I think it will work out in the long run. I'm gonna vote in favor of it.
Maybe if I could, just to address an issue that Elion had going forward. Some of the marketing material that's being developed now, the idea is that we're gonna start creating those partnerships, and not just partnerships within our town hall and with the stakeholders, but more so with those stakeholders, whereas now we can create these partnerships where there might be some cross-marketing that's going to happen. So now we're gonna have shared expenses, if you will, public-private, where now if we start an association, say down on 129, the marketing efforts down there, they will actually pay a little bit. This happened in other communities, so it's not a model that we're creating ourselves. Going forward, the marketing may not be as burdensome as we might think.
So what's being proposed here is really what you've seen in discussions with other towns, and what they're using and what they're doing, and how they're growing their economic base. I think the most important thing that we need to look at here is that we have the BOS and the EDC on the same page, and what they need now going forward is a Board of Appeals, a zoning board, a finance committee that is nearing being on the same page, because developers are not going to say yes to us if we're fighting, because they don't want to deal with us. They don't want to come to us and say, oh, we want to build here, we want to grow here, if they don't think they're going to be able to breeze through and do what they need to do. And that's my concern in voting against something like this, is that they've gone out, they've done the research, they see what we currently need, and they believe this will be the next step in a process that we're going forward with. And I'm thrilled to hear that the EDC and the BOS seem to be on the same page with this. And I think we as committees, such as the planning board and the zoning board and the FinCom, need to get on board. Because again, the thing that's gonna kill any sort of development is if they hear that there are people that aren't willing to agree to what needs to be done in order to get things going. That's my concern.
May I say something?
Of course, we're discussing.
I'm not opposed to having an effort that's needed. I know it's needed. I'm just opposed to adding headcount without really having any idea of its future effectiveness and the cost.
But I think what they've told us and what the discussion's been is that they have gone out and they have talked to other communities, and what they're crafting is based on what they've discussed with other communities, and that's how you gauge what the effectiveness is going to be going forward, is what other communities have done and have seen that it's been successful. So I don't think they're just blindly stabbing in the dark, which is kind of the feeling I'm getting from the dissension, is that they're just creating this to create it, to spend money.
No, I'm not saying that at all. My position purely is about creating a permanent position. It doesn't matter if you spend the money, like Anita said, do the same effort with someone temporary or a consultant. I don't mind that at all.
Or with association dues, or splitting it up among other, shuffling the current staff around and assigning it to someone. My concern is in this economy, hiring a headcount is, you hire someone, then you're stuck, and you have to go, then if they're not effective, it takes 6 months to, write them up, to dismiss them. Like, for, return on our investment of $100,000, I think we'll get bigger bang for our buck if we spent it, and I'm fully for spending the money. I just don't think a headcount is the right choice.
But what we're hearing is that they don't have the head count. I mean, you're talking about reshuffling multiple people in multiple areas and using the funds to go do things with joint associations that they already currently are overtaxed with attending. And I'm not going to speak to the efficiencies of the town and their current departments. I'm not going to speak to the efficiencies of certain people in those departments. Paul can certainly speak greater to that effect. I think that becomes a discussion about whether or not there's effective use of current personnel, and I don't think we're discussing that tonight. I don't want to discuss that tonight. I think what we're hearing from the two other boards is that there's a need, and this is how we fill it, and that's why they're asking for it. I think if it was just about using dues and reshuffling people, we would have had that presented to us, and that's not before us right now. That's my feeling. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're probably gonna need to count.
Aye.
2,
Nay.
3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 2. Thank you. On to the next article.
Okay, make a motion that we approve Article 7 to the purchase of the Chelmsford Forum. I don't want to read all of this.
As presented? As presented?
As presented.
My favorite 2 words.
Favorite 2 words, really?
Well,
I'll second.
tonight.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? This just makes sense. I mean, can we still talk about potentially trying to swindle Billerica out of the land?
Yes.
I mean, it happened to us. We can't be the only town it happens to. The Wang Tower, come on, the land was on, that was a gift.
What is the process? I mean, even if it was not for anything, but if it was a monetary that we would compensate them for, should we, can we approach them?
The town can own land in another community, which is what we're going to do, but you have to pay property taxes
No, I know, I
You-
know.
oh, you wanna get a- you wanna get around the property
We wanna
tax?
get around, this is very valuable land. How did they do it to us with Wang?
That was special act of the legislature.
Legislature, I think.
1950s when they
No, like the 70s.
No, that's further after.
I mean, the Lowell sign keeps changing. We could just go with the sign.
Let's move the Chelmsford sign further down. We're all set. They won't notice we're not paying the taxes.
So there's no way, like, there's no avenue that we could even,
Why would the Berkeley delegation support legislation? You go nowhere.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying, can we just ask? Because you just never know who may be reading this and, you know.
Give up their revenue for
Worst they can do is say no, right? Can we
The
at
only
least-
thing they can do is say.
Well, I think in the discussion about this, we have an immediate need for a rink. We've maintained it, and because we've maintained it, we're able to get it at a greatly reduced cost. It's something that we explore in the future too. It's a valuable piece of property, which the town will own, albeit in another town. It's something that, because it's a town asset, can be sold in the future. And if we see the development that we're hoping to see down in 129, it becomes increasingly more a valuable piece of property in the future. So if we do see any school building activity, which potentially would include, say, I don't know, another rink closer to the actual schools in our town, we would have a funding source if the land were to be sold in the future. I mean, I don't think it makes sense not to do this from any perspective. It's a piece of property we're going to get at a greatly reduced cost. That becomes an asset that we either use currently or sell in the future.
Great.
I agree.
I
It's a
mean, you're not
no-brainer.
given many gifts in the world. This would be a gift.
So there'll be I believe, a borrowing and then a portion of the funds that we're currently holding or are transferred from the levy in order to complete the sale.
We're transferring borrowing proceeds from stormwater.
Ah, okay.
1 million.
Yep.
Borrow the extra 200,000.
An additional 200,000 borrowing. Okay.
The total borrowing is 1.2 million.
But we've already borrowed not only that, but we've already borrowed the other money at a reduced rate because we already borrowed at the reduced
An
rate.
even better deal.
Even
Yes.
better deal. Yes.
So I repeat,
Yes.
there are not many gifts in the world. This
Yeah.
would be one of
All
them.
right. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Good. All right.
That brings us to Article 8, the Roberts Field Playground. And I think it's gonna be written differently than what's presented here, because isn't the money coming from borrowing from, it's written that it's transferring the money from free cash, so.
It says borrowed
Borrowing from
Yeah.
community preservation.
Under the Community Preservation Fund, yeah.
Okay.
under CPC.
I move that the town, from the Community Preservation Fund, borrow $450,000 for the reconstruction, expansion, enhancement of the playground of Roberts Field.
Second? Oh, thank you.
I said.
Any discussion? John, can you just tell us what that borrowing might look like?
Yes.
Thank you. I know Linda and Paul spoke about it previously.
It's based on a projection. It would be a 10-year borrowing. This is just an estimated interest rate to be on the conservative side, since we're going to be borrowing in the future at 4%. So you'd be looking at a principal payment of $45,000 per year. Interest would start out around the first year cost would be about $63,000, and would decline slowly a couple thousand each year over time as you pay the principal off. This is just a guesstimate, but the best estimate we have, the total cost over the life of the bond would be about $549,000.
Okay. How does that fit, how does that fold in with the current borrowing?
Good. If you look at the CPC debt service for what they currently have in this fiscal year, their total debt service right now is about $696,000. I'm going to round off to keep it
That's fine.
simple. Next year, it will be about 669,000.
With the additional borrowing?
No, that's without the additional borrowing. And then the following year in 2020, it begins to decline another 26,000. When you get out to fiscal year 21, we will retire the both bonds for the old Center Town Hall, the CCA, and the North Town Hall, or the North Community Center. So that's when you start to see a pretty good drop-off. But based on what I've seen here, we could have, this could be absorbed in the Community Preservation Fund, a $63,000 cost. You'd be up a little over 700,000. However, you're not exceeding the peak that they've seen back in fiscal year 16 and 17.
And you're seeing,
so we feel this could fit in without.
You're seeing a precipitous drop in 21.
Yes, in 21, you'll be down near 600,000 without this borrowing.
Okay, and then at that
And
point,
then after in 22, it takes a dramatic drop to about 320,000.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because you're retiring more.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Thanks. Anybody have a question for John? Thanks, John. All right, we're still in discussion.
I just think that spot is a tremendous asset to the community. If it's enhanced, it will just be even better. I mean, it's a great location, and,
Well, I agree, not even enhanced, just making it safer, making it,
Right.
Giving it, it's at its end of life, it's past its end of life, and I think,
And then that piece of land affects not only just like children, it's like everybody in the community can access it, which is nice, right? There's something
for everybody.
for everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely think it's a wise investment.
I'm somewhat biased because I've been going to Littleton and Westford for parks recently.
So for just gas cost alone?
Just gas
you're
cost
happy?
alone,
Yeah.
I have to say, Castle in the Woods is a fantastic playground. I'd love to see something like that in Chelmsford, or something to that effect in Chelmsford. I know that my daughter absolutely loves it, and she's only 15 months old, so I mean, we need it. I'm glad to see the improvements we've seen in the last couple of years with the current ones we have, especially, Harrington having the new equipment going in and stuff like that. But we do need, I remember going to Friendship Park when I was younger. We played, I practiced soccer practices there. I learned to skate on the pond there. I mean, it's a good location. It needs to be upgraded.
Yeah, this isn't a want, this is a need.
Yeah, no, it really, I mean, it's not, because if this doesn't pass, if the funding doesn't go through, and, Bill, please correct me if I'm wrong, they're gonna have to start dismantling and taking down Friendship Park.
Eventually, yes. It's Steve, the DPW said that we're basically on borrowed time now.
Okay.
With the current structures.
All right, thank you.
So Friendship Park was relatively new. When I first moved to Chelmsford, my daughter was like a year old, and I didn't know anybody, and I can remember driving by every day like, I wonder what's happening in there. I see all these cars. And then finally someone said, oh, it's a park. And I'm like, oh my God. It's a great thing. It's a great spot. It's just a great community asset, and I hope people will be supportive of this program. And I think they did just a fantastic job in their proposal.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? All right. Where are we now? Article 9, free cash to the General Stabilization Fund.
Make a motion.
Well, before we make the motion, Paul,
We need the
can you
number.
speak to the number that we have for this?
You remember Darlene reported to you last meeting, we had $1,076,000 in free cash to close out of fiscal year 17. The only other use of free cash on this warrant at town meeting was for the E-rate money, if you recall, because that's not required to be funded from the free cash. And we're returning that to the schools who generated that. So the balance number now is $1,041,382. it sounds like a big number, but if you recall, when we met last week, we withdrew $729,954 at spring annual town meeting. And then the differential really is what we need to set aside to, as reserve for the eventual settlement of the public safety contracts with the three largest unions in town, the police, fire, and the other police union. I think when all is said and done, when that all gets resolved and where we'll stand, we will probably be somewhere around 7.6% or so of the town's $128 million operating budget. So the gross amount, if you put all this in, would be about $9.98 million in the fund. But then again, when you
The budget keeps going up.
when you start pushing it off, you're going to be, when it's all said and done and cleared, you're about that midpoint where we've always strived to be at, which is between 5 and 10% of our budget, i.e. around 7.5%.
So the full amount going in would be that 1,000,000.
$1,041,382.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I make a motion that the town transfer $1,041,382 from free cash to the general stabilization fund.
I second.
Discussion? There's no other way, no other place to put it, currently in this current warrant article, these warrant articles, unless we were to fund partially some other project, which quite frankly doesn't make sense, especially where we borrowed $700,000, basically, at the last town meeting, for various items. I think we've always supported a healthy stabilization, budget, and stabilization fund rather, because it affects our bond rating, and, it's best practice really. So, I mean, as you can see, there's no article this time around to reduce the tax levy, quite frankly, because it doesn't make sense, nor has it in the past. That's a little comment from me, sorry. It's, I mean, nothing else to say about it, really.
Let's do it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none.
I would make a motion that we approve Article 10 as presented, in the amount being $50,000.
Second.
Any discussion?
It's two funds, each fund is 50,000.
Each fund's 50,000?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Total, it's 50 for the open space fund and 50 for the recreation.
Still
Okay,
second.
thank you.
No, I appreciate that.
Oh, wait a minute, no.
No, we have a motion and a second.
It says someone second, right?
Oh, I'll second. I
Yeah.
thought-
No, we
I
have
thought
a
you-
second.
you did. I
He's
thought
still
you said we
seconding.
had
Yeah, we have a
one.
second. Any discussion?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it was well presented by Linda tonight. I don't think there's any further discussion to have on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? None.
I make a motion that we accept Article 11, Center Village wayfinding signage. I move that the town transfer from the Community Preservation Fund $15,000 for the purchase and installation of wayfinding signage.
Second.
Discussion?
Great idea.
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the most projected to be the most expensive, well, not the most expensive, but, well, yeah, most expensive, and then the
Yeah.
next one will be a little bit around the same amount. This will be by far the most signs that are put in. I get why it's being done, being done in chunks. It's late, I'm losing my speech here. The 15, 16, 17 killed me. Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. I mean,
I like
gonna
how they're
look great.
taking down
It's gonna
signs
look
as
great.
well. We're not just adding,
I
we're
love that we're
condensing.
taking down signs.
Yes.
Because
We're
it's a mess
eliminating
inside.
redundancy. I like
Yeah,
that.
and you do, you find people that come here from out of town, they go, huh?
Yeah. Listen,
Oh,
I
what?
live
Where we
here and I
go?
go, huh?
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
And really, the center of town is charming. It's quintessential New England.
And now it will be more charming.
Yes, it will be.
And easier to navigate.
I'd like to thank Jim for the presentation. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All's in favor? Aye. Nays or abstentions? Hearing none. Time might take longer.
Article 12. I move we recommend Article 12, Cemetery Commission Improvement and Development Fund. The town transfer $25,000 from the sale of graves and lots to the Cemetery Improvement and Development Fund.
Second.
Discussion? They do a good job. They're fund transfer. All's in favor? Aye. Nays or abstentions? None?
I make a motion that we accept Article 13, telecommunications equipment at the CCA. I move that the town transfer $30,000 from the Cable Television Public Education and Government Access Enterprise Fund, free cash, to purchase and install telecommunications equipment at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts.
Second.
Discussion? I believe Pete said it was 30, and then the RFP currently out for 28 with a little bit of cushion. Sounds good to me.
I can't vote on this one because I'm a member of the board of directors at the CCA.
Aha.
A
Okay.
bit of a conflict of
I'm a
interest
member
there,
of
my
the PEG
friend.
Board of Directors, so I'll also be abstaining.
We still have a quorum, which is good. I'm glad we're all here. So, yeah, you could, so where did the second come from? Okay, good. So Matt and Elian will not be participating in any discussion, and they have not seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Thank you for not making us go outside.
I would make a motion that we approve Article 14, Chelmsford Telemedia Garage Storage Bay. I move that the town transfer $40,000 from the cable television enterprise free cash to reconstruct a storage bay at the Department of Public Works garage located at 54 Richardson Road for the purpose of storage of cable television, vehicles, and equipment.
I'll second.
Matt will be abstaining and not participating in the discussion. Any discussion? No. Looks good. They said they couldn't, I told you, you comment, I'm gonna talk longer. No, the building looks good. I think it's a good idea. They said that they were trying to build a bigger building, and they can't do it. All's in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions?
Abstain.
I would make a motion that we approve Article 15, recreational marijuana general bylaw as presented.
I'll second.
Discussion. I think we need to look at all three of
Yeah,
these.
can we look at all three of them together? And then, but vote separately?
I think we should just, well, we have a current motion on the table.
Can she amend her motion?
What you can do is remove the.
Friendly removal of my, while we discuss how you want to present it.
That's great. I move that we have discussion, I entertain a motion to have discussion on all three Articles 15, 16, and 17 prior to entertaining motions to the separate articles.
Okay.
So moved, yeah.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
All right. 15, 16, 17, you kind of have to look at all three of them at the same
Yeah.
time.
Or at the very least 15 and 16.
At the very least 15 or 16. It's a tough one.
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm torn, for a number of reasons. So, I completely understand where Chief Spinney's coming from a public safety standpoint, from you know, I mean, many of you know, I mean, I was a criminal justice major, so I understand. And yet at the same time, I feel like if it's coming into our town already, we should get some money for it. So I'm feeling very conflicted by it. If there was no delivery, I don't know if I'd have as much of a problem with it. But because it's gonna be coming into our town, most likely, because we're gonna be bookended by Lowell and Tingsboro.
Yeah, way to go, Tingsboro.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
More money?
Part of me feels like we should have some revenue to pay for the police that are gonna have to be on the streets on these additional calls and dealing with the people driving through our town. And but at the same time, I don't like the idea of one being in Chelmsford. So I struggle with this.
I was in the same spot you were.
Yeah.
Until Leon brought up the mentioning of property values.
Yeah.
And so when I'm looking, and I agree 100%, and I'm exactly where you were, you know.
Anita, can you take that mic and turn it this way?
know,
Not that you're
unfortunately,
not loud, but,
You getting texts from home again?
no, I'm not, I'm just, I know that we will.
you know, unfortunately, the state voted for this. And, you know, we're not a town that doesn't have, you know, chain stores here, or, no, we're a dry town, we're, you know, we have all this other stuff. But I'm leaning more toward kind of just wait and see, before, like, let me tell you,
Like
before.
moratorium, wait and
Yeah, I'm
see?
a more,
Okay.
right now, a moratorium, just wait and see. I don't necessarily want to shut the door, but I was thinking along your ends, from a financial perspective, we're gonna have to, you know, I live in East Chelmsford, I border Lowell. Right now, we have a drug problem with, you know, people going down the street, you know, doing handoffs now, right? Let alone when, you know, Lowell starts popping these in.
You know, that's, sorry.
But, you know, at the same point, I'm concerned about being the town that has this and our property values going down, and I think that's a very valid point. You know, being the first town that says, yeah, let's do it and let's approve this, I think may have a negative effect on us financially.
You don't wanna be the marijuana mecca of the Northeast?
No, not really.
So I think this is a good opportunity to kind of do a wait and see, at least that's where.
Now, this does not have a financial impact, right?
It does.
Certainly does.
Because you get 3% of what's sold in town.
Other than that.
I'm sorry, Matt, what was the estimation of
No.
that we talked about last week, about $200,000?
$200,000, 3% of the towns is projected, I believe, correct me, was 200,000
Ballpark?
ballpark. But what I would say, and I think anyone who knows me knows, I'm very greedy as far as it goes for revenue for the town, and I like the
I
town
wasn't
to
sure
be
where you were going
aggressive.
with that.
Right,
Yeah.
but I just don't feel it's worth our, to earn money on the backs of things that are gonna cause people heartbreak, are gonna cause increased crime in town, and extra burden. We are gonna get the burden of there being the flow of the traffic around us, things are going to change, but the state did vote for it, Chelmsford did not. I just don't feel the revenue is worth the additional exposure and the change in climate to our town. And I also don't believe it's fair to basically earn money off other people's problems, which this is gonna create.
Before we have further discussion, Matt, are you comfortable continuing with this discussion?
I'm gonna abstain from the discussion and the vote, since I do represent a neighboring town that is also involved in it.
Particularly in this discussion, I would ask you to sit in the audience as opposed to sitting at the table, just so there's no inference, especially given the discussion I'm about to have.
Thank you, sir.
The, as to your point, as, you know, of people suffering and stuff, the way I feel is that, I mean, I'm carrying this to an extreme, but we sort of already do that with having liquor stores. Because there's a lot of people that are alcoholics and people that are drunk drivers that kill people, so, you know.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, I see your point. I just think that, in my opinion, the adverse outweighs the revenue that would be generated.
Risk outweighs
and I
the
don't-
reward.
Yeah,
Right,
I'm
right,
not
I'm
sure the
not-
revenue's enough.
Right.
If we're talking local 10%, I'm going, hey, sign me up,
Yeah.
bring them in.
Well, I
But
mean,
especially where
not
these
even
are-
the percentage, though. If you're talking, I'm talking solid numbers here. Forget percentage.
yeah.
If the 3% was, we were talking like 500 to 1 million, I think, you know, that's a lot
But you
of
have to
money
weigh it
to
against
turn
the
away. But
increase.
200,000, I don't know, yeah.
Well, you have
That's
to weigh against the
3%
increase
today,
in
though.
but you have to weigh it against the increase in the cost to the town for facilitating it. Both not only from a public safety perspective, but also from the Board of Health perspective, from the building department perspective, just from general enforcement. I mean, these are, the main concern I have with this is it's still not legal federally.
Yeah.
And because it's not legal federally, we have the issue where the banks aren't getting involved, and you are dealing with all cash businesses. I mean, these places in Colorado are opening up, and they're all cash. They're buying these locations, all cash. And you have questions about how it's being funded, where it's being funded from,
And where's the money going?
and where's the money going. Because it literally is an all-cash business. It does become a fortress, and it becomes an attraction that you may not want. As far as our border towns, I mean, even if we delay, and that's kind of where I was leaning towards when we came into tonight, because having read the concerns that we circulated from Chief Ryan, Chief Spinney, and Sue Rosa from the Board of Public Health, Board of Health. It's, while I was looking at the revenue, you gotta weigh the costs here, and I mean, initially I voted against the legalization back when it voted as a state, and I don't know. It's a concern because we're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. It's just a matter of to what degree we're going to have to deal with it, and even if we delay it a year, doesn't mean we're going to see what's happening from other towns in other cities, because they may not be up and running in a year. So we've gone a year now where we've delayed it, and we're still wondering what's going to happen because it's not established yet. And we're at the same position sitting here next year, having the same discussion about, what do we do now? Where we go? Because we have no new data. We don't know what's going to happen in other places. We have no idea how it's going to be treated. I mean, look at New Hampshire. They just recently voted to decrease the liabilities considered surrounding marijuana. That's on the ballot. They are discussing it. I don't know to the extent at which we're going to have any action up there, but it's. I mean, we see. I don't know. It's just. This is a tough one.
So can we change, 5 years down the road, say we voted against?
So
In
you're
favor
saying
of the
If we say
prohibition.
that you cannot have a recreational
that's what I'm saying.
facility in here, in 5, 10 years,
Years,
can we change our mind?
Can we change our mind?
Of course you can.
Going to amend the bylaws, amend the agenda.
Assuming it's still legal in
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
All right.
At that point in time, yeah.
Then what's, all right, then,
Yeah.
So yeah, we can certainly vote against it now, and then 5-10 years from now, have another bylaw amendment to change the bylaw.
I just think I do think that we're kidding ourselves, that thinks that this is not coming into our neighborhood.
Oh, it's definitely going to affect
definitely
us.
is.
I just
And
don't think.
But I also think that, just like liquor stores are,
But again, to what degree do we want to affect us?
I just don't
Do
think
we
we need
wanna
to be the
be-
first ones, and I do think there's a financial impact to the value of our homes by being the first one, so I don't think it's,
And the cost benefit of the 3%, it just doesn't near outweighing.
no.
Right, and
the
if
increased cost of town.
if I thought there was gonna be an additional kickback from the state for, of their 17%, are they gonna give a certain percentage more to the towns that have these facilities? No, so I don't think we're gonna be,
They're
given
trying
our
to-
history, I don't really think what goes to the state is necessarily gonna be flowing back to
Well, not only
Chelmsford.
that, but they're trying to deal with their own policing issues. I mean, just look, again, the SJC decision that came down this week has made it more difficult to prosecute these situations.
But I
Who
mean,
knows
one
what
of
other
the,
rulings are gonna come down to make it even more difficult? Yeah.
one of the things that I worry about is, for example, let's say my neighbor sells their, the house next door to me, and all of a sudden, the person that buys it is a marijuana dealer, and they start planting grass all over the,
They can only have 12.
Yep.
Okay, but still,
If it's not zoned commercially for them to do it, they can't do it. And they can only have 12 personal plants, they can only have for personal use currently at least, and they cannot sell
Isn't it like
it.
a garden, though?
right.
Yeah,
Like my mother grows tomatoes, right?
Right.
it's like, it would be the equivalent.
But that's
of
legal in
a-
the state, though,
It's legal in the
right?
state. They can do
Right,
that
like,
now.
They can do that
Yeah,
now.
of course,
right?
yeah.
Like some, my mother,
But I mean,
Your neighbor could be doing that now, Leon. Right now.
I know she doesn't, but, no, but I've heard
You
horror
just turned
stories. No, she wouldn't do that. I've heard horror stories in Colorado that people buy houses and then they put marijuana plants all over inside the house.
Well, I think the problem with that, in that scenario, is that they're regulated a little differently, first of all, in Colorado, but also, speaking to both Sue Rosa's and Chief Spinney's discussion, you can have people that bend and break the rules. So it's legal, it becomes even more, it facilitates the ability to do nefarious actions that wasn't previously there because it's easier to start it.
Right. Having a store in town won't affect that. If someone's gonna, it's legal now.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they wanna get 12 plants and split them off inside their home and try to do it like, Chief Ryan said, under the radar, they're gonna do it whether
Decorations.
there's a shop in town or not. Yeah, but, yeah, this is a tough one for me. But you know,
For me, for me, it's, you know, I just think being the first one, you know, it's just gonna have an
Yeah.
adverse effect on our property values.
No,
In that, you know,
yeah, no, you're
it's
right.
not worth the 3%.
yeah.
You know,
Because
come
it-
back in
Because
5 years.
Because it
when
won't be
they've
shops,
increased
it
the
will
tax-
be
Yeah, right.
production.
Yeah, and
And
again,
that speaks to
Yeah.
Chief Ryan's concerns regarding the building safety and the
Mm-hmm.
code violations for that. It's,
Well, yeah.
I don't know, it's,
But even if they start charging for inspections and stuff like that, and that would be a revenue
well,
source,
you
to
heard
me,
me,
it's
you heard me
dollar
read,
and
they had to,
cents.
they had to create whole new divisions in order to handle all the violations. It's,
If you-
it's a huge cost. It's a huge cost, and although we have to deal with it anyway, coming in and coming through, to exacerbate the situation at a 3% benefit is just not, it's foolhardy, is what it is.
The only other benefit you get locally is that impact fee over the first 5 years, that can't exceed 3% of the establishment sales during that first 5-year period.
Yeah, and it's,
That's the impact, that's their ability to address that.
yeah, oh, okay.
Just so you know,
What?
Yeah, no, so there's an additional 3% that if you're one of the first, if you, basically, if you're a guinea pig, and you go first, they're gonna give you a little bit extra kick, from the sales. Yeah.
Yeah, but your property values on that, and you'll lose that
Well,
from a
and-
town perspective,
Oh,
right?
no,
Like,
he's telling us there's additional.
I didn't realize it was 6%.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And the
Yeah.
state not only gets the 17%, they also get the sales tax on it.
Uh-huh.
So they're really getting.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
More. Anyway, yeah.
Still better than the 5% was in the bill.
As, just to reiterate, the town of Chelmsford, the individuals voted no.
Yeah, and
Well, a narrow majority, but yes.
Yeah, so I mean, just another little factoid.
No, yeah. I don't know, it's,
I just don't think it's worth it to me, in my, I mean, I know that we should, look to every possible way to create revenues for the town, but to me, it's just not worth,
and
the expanded risk and problems.
And I agree, Kathy. I think although it would be a potential source of revenue, I think it'd be a greater source of diminution of value.
We'll probably just have to give it to Spiney, right? For added police enforcement.
Oh, it will code enforcement for the building department. You'd have health code violations that you'd have to consider. I mean, there's a substantial cost that is probably associated with it. And again, it'd be the 6%, not the 3%, but even with that, I mean, I don't think it's gonna lead to a situation in which it'll be financial beneficial to us. At least not in the current state that it's in, and because there are so many towns that are now voting against it, or at least putting a moratorium on it. I think, again, it makes you more of a guinea pig, and it makes you more attractive, unfortunately makes you attractive for the wrong kind of attraction. Any further discussion?
No.
All right, so we've voted to discuss all 3 articles. Now I'll entertain a motion on Article
15?
15.
I make a motion that we approve Article 15, Recreation Marijuana General Bylaw, Section 89, as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions?
Yes, one abstention.
Okay. Article 16.
I make a motion that we accept Article 16, Recreational Marijuana Zoning Bylaw, as presented.
Second. No, go ahead.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? None.
so we can skip it.
It's concerning Article 17. Because we voted yes on Articles 15 and 16, I do believe we should still vote on Article 17, given the yes, we can. Because we'll be asked our position should 15 and 16 fail. Yes. So, do I have a motion on Article 17?
You have a motion for Article 17 as presented.
I'll second.
Discussion.
So we're going to be voting on this with the caveat that
This is our position.
Yes.
It's our position based on the fact that 15 and
We
16
support this
didn't pass.
article, if, as and when Articles 15 and 16 fail.
Okay.
Contingent upon the failure of 15 and 16.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
No.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none. Matt, you can return.
Matt,
There are different voting thresholds on 15 and 16. It's conceivable
that one could pass and the other, yeah.
15 and not 2/3 on 16, but you just have to deal with it on the fly. I just wanted to point it out to you.
Yeah, that's right, it could,
Paul, what
Because
happens?
One is majority vote, because the general bylaw, the other one's a 2/3, the zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
If the town meeting is split, you could have one pass and not 16.
And then what happens?
Well, then we just have a general bylaw, which
Okay.
would prohibit it, but it wouldn't
we
be
don't,
strong.
we don't have the fail-safe in place.
Of the zoning,
And
okay.
so, if 15 fails and 16 doesn't, I'm sorry, if 15 fails and no, other way around. 15 passes, 16 fails.
Still go to 17 for a potential moratorium because one of them failed?
I don't think you would, because definitely you would have had a general bylaw that would
Right.
prohibit the sales.
So you wouldn't put a moratorium on the establishments, on the zoning, because you have a bylaw that says you can't do it.
Okay. So it's
But-
really contingent upon 15?
Well, and 17 is contingent on whether, basically you come back to town meeting if 15 fails on a state level.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if 15 fails, I don't think we would take up 16.
right,
Really think about it. If it doesn't fail, if it fails to get a majority, you're not gonna get a 2/3 zoning vote.
right.
So it's really 15 that's going to fail.
Okay.
Okay.
18.
Yay.
Yeah, Matt,
Welcome
you can
back.
return.
Sure I can vote on this?
I don't know, let's check, hold on.
So I don't believe we have to vote on Article 18, the scenic roads.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No financial impact, right?
No financial impact.
Oh, we should vote anyways.
Well, you know what, I can argue there's a financial impact to everything in here.
Right.
Yeah,
But quite frankly, I don't want to vote on this.
so let's keep going.
Yeah,
It's 11:02, let's move it along.
I don't know what scenic really means, but I've been down those roads and they aren't that attractive.
It's like a single
those
line
poor people who
versus a
live there, I'm
double
sure they're
line.
beautiful
I mean, it's
roads.
just a regular road. Like, you know.
And
Yeah, it's a single
Okay.
line.
Article 19.
Okay, Article 19, I make a motion that we vote to approve Article 19, citizen petition for the rezone of parcel 113397-7 as presented.
Second.
Discussion. This has a financial impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it changes the zoning, it increases the tax burden on the property that was put into place.
We'll increase our
Increases-
tax.
It increases our
fees.
tax revenues and
Yeah.
fees.
Right.
Yeah.
Would
It
be-
doesn't make sense not to say yes to this.
Right, because the other option is, like he said, if they have to shut Russell Mill down because the pool can't function anymore, now they're selling the entire property.
God only
Yeah.
knows what
And
those
God knows
are.
what kind of developer we get.
And not only that, we lose a, albeit private, establishment in town that
Yep.
is, serves a lot of the community.
Meets a need. You're
You
abstaining
serious?
again?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, okay, I know why you're abstaining, thank you.
I mean, my only,
Today it's not my,
You sure you still want to be on the committee, Matt? I mean,
I feel like I was a member, but I haven't been a member for years and years and years, so I feel like.
You feel
Just
confident?
acknowledge
Yeah.
that I was at one point
That's
a
fine.
member of Russell Mill.
That's not a conflict of interest.
I will, for transparency's sake, I was a member for 2 years, 3 years ago.
but you're not current.
Not anyway, I've
No, you're
not
not
been a
a
member for
member.
3 years. Yes,
You're not currently doing business with anybody associated with this.
correct.
I mean, Mark Branco was my high school music teacher. Ooh, okay, there we go.
And the band played on.
Yeah, I feel confident speaking on
Kathy
this.
was mentioning it, just for transparency's sake.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I remember him from the band days.
Oh, yeah, no, he was the band director, yeah.
So, there will be the additional, there'd be the ongoing tax base and the, new construction, new growth, would add to new growth.
Yep. I agree.
plus permits and all kinds of
Yep.
things.
And I'm not turned off by what's proposed. I think it's still tasteful.
Though I really wish it was single family.
Seemed like a
I
relatively.
think it's
They
still
still look-
tasteful.
They still look nice.
I
but
don't,
they've
I
seen
honestly,
something.
I'd have to agree. I don't think it's financially viable the other way
No,
around.
I know,
And
no,
if it's
but I
not
would
financially
love,
viable,
it's
they
a great
wouldn't,
neighborhood,
yeah.
I would be
yeah.
interested
They
in.
have so many
Maybe
houses in the
buying
area.
something.
I forgot, did they say, have they already had a vote of the planning committee?
They were, yeah, I believe they were in front
think
of the planning committee. The planning board, rather.
And do we know
I
what
believe
they
that
did?
I believe that they recommended approval.
I think it was yesterday.
Unanimously, no. Yesterday was CPC. He was in front of them last week, he said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he's in front of the board of selectmen on Monday, and then they have a public meeting Thursday next week, I think. I don't know, it's on the postcards, all the town meeting reps got. No further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? None.
One abstention.
I'm sorry, I apologize, one abstention.
What's 20?
Pam, before you make the next motion, Pam, did you note the abstentions from Matt on 15, 16, and 17? Thank you.
At 20?
20, is that the animals, is that?
Yeah, I don't see a financial impact with this one. Except that there'll be 2 animals on the property.
It adds fees.
Yeah.
Ma and Pa.
Um,
If you want to vote on it, we can vote on it, but I just
I'm
don't
just
see
saying.
a significant financial impact for us to give our
I don't think the
recommendation
finance-
either way.
Yeah.
All right,
21, the parcel of land.
I mean, technically,
Maybe have a vote on this?
The
It's-
financial impact
I don't
would be.
to the other portion of
other
property.
portion of the property.
This is converting a piece of land that, well, it's selling a piece of land that if they weren't to put a, control over, would be saleable land.
Right.
That does have a somewhat
So it's
financial impact.
taking it off the
It's taken off
potential
the
tax.
market.
Yeah,
Yeah, so to speak,
So there's a negative
yeah,
financial impact.
yeah.
yeah. It's currently off the tax roll anyway, because it's owned by the town and it's not being used. Would it be more attractive if it was maintained whole? I don't know, I don't think so. Quite frankly.
Do we vote on this one?
We should.
What's the temperature of the room, besides the fact that it's hot in here and it's late?
I
It's
don't
11?
care.
Oh,
I
wait.
mean,
If we vote on it.
Let's hurry up, make a
Let's
decision.
just
It
do it
adds
quickly.
to open space.
Quickly.
I'll recommend that we recommend approval of Article
Yeah.
21. Move
Second.
All right.
Any discussion?
No.
No. All's in favor?
Done.
okay, Article 22, I make a motion that we approve Article 22, eliminate solid waste collection program to rental multifamily buildings with 4 or more units as presented.
I
Second.
second.
Discussion?
This is a great idea.
Very much in favor.
This makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is another no-brainer.
I think Nick and Paul presented it well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? None.
Article 23, I make a recommendation that we accept Article 23, pilot for 40 Swain Road Solar Generating Facility as presented.
I second.
Which one was this?
I mean, it's the pilot program for pay in lieu of taxes for the solar farm.
Good idea.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? None?
Do
And
we
on
even
the-
do 24?
I know.
All,
It's re-election on town meetings.
doesn't
Yeah, and
have any
25.
financial.
are all the rest of the articles the charter articles? And I don't believe that we need to vote on any of them. I mean, in the past, we've commented on appointed versus elected, but in this position, I don't think there's a great financial impact. I mean, technically, there's a financial impact with the fact that that there is a revenue generating source to the person who's appointed, rather than elected. either way, they're generating revenue.
Right, yeah, it doesn't affect it.
But
either way.
it doesn't affect it either way. I don't feel a need to vote on it.
No, I agree.
Okay. All right, well, that means that we're done voting. But we're not done.
Thank you.
Nice try. Nope, nice try. All right, timeline for the finance warrant book production. I have it right here. We're on time, Pam. This is unusual. We could have? Okay, well, I'm glad we didn't.
Now you
Tell
tell
us
us.
now.
Did you want to be here next week, scrambling to get it done? I know I don't. The chairman's letter finalized. I will work on that this weekend. My wife will kill me. Final comments, edits due to the clerk by the 26th. Try to take a look at stuff, guys, this weekend, or the presentations that were provided to us. I'll recirculate everything that we have. Let me know what you'd like to include in the book. I think there's a lot of information there that we should include in our book, because, again, people like the fact that we included a lot more in our book last go-around. And so the more...
I think everything sent to us, like from, especially the people who weren't here.
Yeah, well, yes, but I don't want to include a 20-page presentation. I
No,
want
but
to
I mean,
include portions.
the thing from the Board of Health and from Chief Ryan, I think should go in.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree, especially given our vote on the position.
Yes.
Especially, a lot of us changed our initial discussion of it.
Any additional statistics that, the police and fire may have?
Yeah. Yeah, but let's take a look at the other presentations that we, especially tonight. And I know there are certain portions that I want to put in that make sense, at least for the financial aspects of it, but also such as pictures of what potentially the park might look like at Friendship Park, and so it's at Roberts Field.
Is the school department gonna make a presentation at town meeting on the modules?
Yes, I believe so. Article 1, yeah, Article 1, well, that will be one of the presentations.
So, my recommendation would be,
I'll
photos.
contact Jay and see if he can send me some updated photos.
With the
like that.
little kiddos
Yeah.
in action.
Plus, they're having that open house before town meeting.
Although we didn't technically do a vote on Article 1, because we don't do a vote on Article 1, so it's not really something that we make a vote on or discuss.
We could make a friendly,
We could, I will extend
he
an
wanted to
olive
have
branch to Jay,
his own
yeah.
little package at,
That's fine,
or present,
yeah.
when he makes his presentation, have photos, because I think everybody's gonna wanna see those. and
Yeah,
see how
the
nice they look.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your comment. The 26th is what, next Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, thank you. So clerk prints final copy of book on the 27th. So that's the plan now, Pam, 27th, with wiggle room?
Yeah.
Is she saying
No,
like
I know.
24-hour wiggle room, maybe?
Yeah.
It defeats the purpose.
It defeats the purpose of voting, yeah, exactly. Well, not entirely, because then we'd be scrambling to do everything in one night. But, I get what you're saying. So, yeah, if everyone can take a look between now and this weekend and let me know, that'd be great. Let me see here. So we have the timeline. Is there any old business? All right. Any new business? I do have one thing, and I failed to mention last week. The Association of Town Finance Committees. Their annual event this year is going to be Saturday, October 21st, at the Tri-County Regional High School in Franklin, from 9 to 2:30. We did not send anybody last year.
October 21st, right?
October 21st, yes. We did not send anybody last year. I went 2 years ago. It was informative. It's a session in the morning, then followed by a lunch with a guest speaker, and there's a session in the afternoon. You choose which event you want to go to. You work with other finance committees from around Massachusetts. It's informative. It helps a lot with discussing the situation, and we pay for this membership and for the attendance. So if anyone can go,
I'll check my schedule. I
check your
think it was
schedule.
something I might like to
When do we need to know by, Pam? Do you know?
I'll check too. Or is it just one person?
It's in
I think
Franklin
we can all go,
this
we
year.
just have to tell them.
Probably it's early October, but I would have to get it in.
Southwest,
Due to get your
I believe.
signature.
Oh, I might be able to run.
I believe so.
Okay, so early October.
Okay.
I'll-
We can meet up.
I'll get back
we can-
to-
October 1st is, yeah, okay, so a week from now, a week and a half from
October
now.
21st.
About time that we have to be there.
I won't be here.
What I will do is I'll send around the information for it, an
I
email.
think you already did.
Did I already?
It was, we was here last week in
Yeah.
our little,
I'll recirculate it and take a look at it. It's a good program, a lot of information.
9
They
to
give out the
2.
new book every year. So yeah, take a look.
9 to 2.
Oh, 9 to 2.
Any other new business?
Nope.
Do we have public comment? I can't believe we still have a
I
public.
would say it's 11:15, I can't, people are still here.
This is unusual. There's no press questions, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.